better check for pose. You better check for pose. You better check for
They are dead on that.
all the best things love can bring. All in the blind spot that we don't see. Wipe the dirt.
It was earlier tonight. I don't.
13, she had her 13th birthday party. She was happy that we were all together.
She wanted to walk the rest of the way.
You will hurt the ones that love you, and they will hurt you right back. Sing along, sing along. Our love is a heart attack. You better check for pulse. You better check for pulse.
It just seemed like he had so much going on, and it was just beautiful that I was like, why don't you just try this out, you know? Into it, and I didn't.
Shanann Watts and her two daughters, 3-year-old Celeste and 4-year-old Bella, vanished on Monday. Their startling disappearance triggering a statewide alert as police and the FBI focus on her home outside Denver, where she was last seen.
Say hi. Say hi. Cece likes the camera. Say hi, Cece.
She loves the camera.
Say hi. Hi. She loves the camera. I don't know if you guys saw her. And then there's Bella. Say hi. We got to get her dressed. We have a team meeting here in, I don't know what time it is, in like 45 minutes.
Go in the ocean. I mean,
Where's that?
I was in a really bad place. And I got a friend request from Chris on Facebook. And I was like, oh, what the heck? I'm never going to meet him. Except, well, one thing led to another. And 8 years later, we have 2 kids. We live in Colorado. And he's the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Oh.
Hi, baby. It's hot.
Big hug.
Big hug.
Where is he? Where's Chris?
And the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen.
Hey guys, welcome back to What's the Obsession True Crime. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here on this Friday night. What's the Obsession date night? We try to always have date night on Friday nights, and I'm so glad you guys could make it. We got to a really late start. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. Some things went crazy with Thanksgiving, just people changing plans, had some people staying here that I wasn't planning on, right? So things just got a little busy. But I told you we were going to be doing a Watts live stream tonight, and I do not want to let you guys down, and I love spending time with you. So here we are. Okay, I'm just going to roll one more little 90-second intro while I get the video queued. Going to say hi to all you who are here. Then we're going to get started.
It's me. I guess just call me back when you have a chance. Hi. Hi. It's me. I miss your face. I was just calling to say hi. Call me back.
Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I'm having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm really trying to help you guys. I need you guys to help me too. Like,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
do this as a team, but just don't.
So
fucking let me down,
the
please.
reason why we can't, like, I did think about this yesterday, that I would like to sit down with you once we have your text messages and the phone calls, and we can put them in a some type of easily looking, that we can sit down and look at them and compare them, and we can kind of get the context of how everything was going that night. I would like to do that with you. Unfortunately, so the download that we got yesterday is going to take multiple days to be analyzed. I probably won't have it back till next week. And then because you guys did have so many text messages, one of my analysts is working on getting those in order, so we can put something together where we can actually sit down and discuss it. But I do think that's something that I want to do in the near future, sometime probably next week.
I mean, I can do that. I don't mind giving you guys my time. I just need you guys to, like, help me with my employer and try to just help me brace for this media thing.
I'm with you. We definitely need to accelerate the case, because the more it takes, the less sure that they are of situations.
He murdered her. She's out of the picture. You're never going to know if she was pregnant. If he can get away with murder, you're not going to. I got divorced from my wife. You say, do you understand what I'm saying here? If she's gone,
But this,
Don't lead,
hypothetically,
please.
yeah,
Don't lead
hypothetically,
on.
if she,
Okay.
you understand where I'm going. If
Right,
you
but you're-
didn't know,
You're leading into questions that are nothing with your.
if you didn't know though
Wait, Nick.
that she was there,
Did you hear what I said?
I'm following you.
Stop asking about it. She didn't have anything to do with it. She wasn't there that morning. She voluntarily cooperated with law enforcement. She provided us all the information. I'm not going to tell you where she's at. Stop. Leave me alone.
Okay. Oops. Wait, I wasn't ready for that yet, but okay, fine. Wait, hold it. Okay. All right. So, I just rolled some of my fun little intros. I love making intros. I love putting music to this stuff and just kind of making it, I don't want to say theatrical, but, setting a tone to what it is we are seeing that I feel like kind of imbibes the energy, which usually is kind of horrible, right? So, of the case that we're talking about. So I love doing that. So thank God I have a few of them. and even just watching that intro material, we've already seen so many things that are wrong. And we are going to be talking about that tonight. So tonight we are going to be talking about Chris Watts' horrifying crime, what they don't want you to know. So who is they? Well, they is like District Attorney Rourke. Anybody? Well, I was going to say he and his team. Yes, he and his team, but led by him. We're going to give him full credit. We don't want to take anything away from our boy, Rourke. No, we don't ever want to do that. And also, sadly, because I really like to give law enforcement credit, and I give law enforcement so much credit. But I guess what I like is when we see what's going on with law enforcement is consistent with, us wanting to give them credit because they deserve credit. And of course, yes, they do deserve some credit in this case. But guys, they also did not want us to know a lot of things, and they hid them. It's called a cover-up. They covered them up. It is a cover-up. There is a cover-up in this case. There's no doubt about it. And tonight we are going to be talking about the potential, I should say, accomplice, Chris Watts' mistress, and, well, the cover-up. So thank you guys again for being here. Please do the YouTube thing. Hit the like, all that good stuff. I appreciate you guys, and it's so great to see you. Sherry, my God, you are so freaking kind. Thank you for the $20 super chat, Sherry. You are just so sweet. She's also one of our amazing moderators. Oh, and I want to recognize all of them in a moment. And just thank you for all that you do, for your support, and for who you are. And speaking of amazing, Sherry, I know on this channel, we really love our moderators. I am so happy that on this channel, I feel like, you know, the viewers and the chat community really have a unique relationship with the moderators. And I think that's amazing. And I think, you know, it makes our chat awesome. Thank you all for being here and for being awesome and making the live streams awesome. So I just want to thank them. So our two managing moderators are Honeybun and Anaphylaxis. Shoot, I don't think I sent her the link. Are you here, Anaphylaxis? You guys are so amazing. I literally couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. And Honeybun really is like my backbone. And then I also want to mention Cuffy, who has done so incredibly much for this channel, for you guys, and for me, especially recently. Well, she just came on with us a few months ago, and I couldn't do without her either. She does research for me, for us, and she also runs our Discord. So why don't you drop the link to the Discord? Guys, the Discord, the What's the Obsession Discord is amazing. And I'm not bragging because Cuffy, it has done it all. Suspicious helped, Pepper Spray helped, Honeybun, Sherry, all our girls. Come on, guys, get with it. Thomas McCarthy is part of that community, but you know, he's not currently one of our moderators, but thank you for all you do, and definitely go check out our Discord. And then we also have Pepper Spray, Sherry, Suspicious, and Edward Schwank. And then we have like our kind of honorary moderators, right, who are here. And I'm sorry, I was doing this last minute. I couldn't make a little board for you, like Deadline Crime and Lifestyle. Hey, Jennifer, thank you for all that you do for the channel and for supporting us. And then I know Jessica's sort of an honorary moderator, meaning, you know, I'm so happy that you guys are part of the channel and you're doing what you're doing. But, you know, these other guys, I make them work, guys. I make them work. It's like slave labor. Okay, so thank you so much, guys. All right. And welcome again to everybody who's here. So let me see if this video is finished uploading. Then we can get right into that. Oh, it is. All right. Does anyone have a question that you would like to be posed for, oops, one sec. Holy cow. Oh, I see. Give me 1 second, guys. All right, listen, I've got to plug my computer in. You're just going to have to give me a second here. Just give me a second. Hold it, because I have to step away from my computer. I'll let you listen to the lovely cadence of NK's voice for just a moment. As soon as I'm done, I'll turn it off.
You guys just call me back when you have a chance. Bye. Hi. It's me. I miss your face. I was just calling to say hi. Call me back.
Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I'm having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm really trying to help you guys. I need you guys to help me too. Like,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
do this as a team, but just don't
So
fucking let me down,
the
please.
reason why
Right? Can you even believe that she says that to, you know, the CBI agent who's investigating her, Kevin Kobach? Useless CBI agent who's investigating. Yeah, we can do this as a team, but just don't like fucking let me down. Okay. There's just so much to be said about that. But all right, let's get right into it. What we're gonna watch are pieces of some videos that I've already put out for the most part. Some of it is new material because I kind of had to bridge them together. So I took out parts of the bombshell videos, of the ultimatum videos, of the videos that have featured on my channel, that have featured the parts of this investigation, the items in the discovery, sometimes the findings that people like myself and the people who work with this channel and research and investigation have uncovered, because there have been those things with this case. And also other people, of course, not just on this channel. We work with other people, and then other people who are not law enforcement agents officially have also uncovered some things that have been proven to be fact. They've been verified. These people have been vetted. We know that they're true. And we got those truths, that information, that accuracy, those facts, not from law enforcement, not from District Attorney Burke. Oh, hell no. Don't ever expect that, my friends. But from others who also said something does not smell right here. This is not okay. What happened in the investigation seems weird. The plea deal is like, what? Super bizarre. What happened? You know, the autopsy is being sealed for 99 years. Why is that? Why is it so secretive? What's going on here? And what about that mistress and her almost 12 hours of interview material where she does nothing but lie, materialize serious lies, one after another, after destruction of evidence, after interfering with the investigation? What is going on here? There are so many questions to be asked. They're all legitimate, and we have so few answers. So let's take a look at what those questions are, what those issues are related to Chris Watts' horrifying crime, and what they don't want you to know. The accomplice and the cover-up. Let me bring this in. And again, welcome to everybody who's here. Oh, I know that it's snowing in some other areas right now, other than upstate New York. Like I was talking to Sherry earlier. She's in Wisconsin. She said, what are you supposed to get, honey? 6 to 8 inches. And I saw some other people in chat said snowing too. I am in upstate New York, and man, winters are longer and longer each year here, it seems. I mean, the snow is beautiful. I love it around the holidays, but oh, it is cold and it is snowing. So if you are new to the chat especially, but anyway, everyone, come on, chime in. Let us know where you're watching from. We would love to get to know you more. Stop, screen, start, screen, stop, screen, start, screen. Have you guys heard from other creators that StreamYard just made a shitload of changes that like nobody knew about? It's confusing everybody, keeping us on our toes. All right. Okay, here we go.
The decision was made about 4 days ago.
The decision to take the death penalty off the table in exchange for Christopher Watts' guilty plea to all 9 counts he was originally charged with, including first-degree murder of a child under 12, tampering with a deceased body, and unlawful termination of a pregnancy.
The Watts family murders. This is undoubtedly one of the most horrific crime stories of our era. Over 5 years has passed, and with each passing year, with each passing day, nothing about this case becomes more clear. Looking back on the investigation of this case and the prosecution of Chris Watts, you have to ask yourself, was anything ever meant to be clear? Was justice ever meant to be achieved?
Oh, good girl. Oh, I love it. Good job. High five, baby.
I want to stay with her. Don't take her away.
By the time you are done watching this video, you're going to understand that something very wrong happened in the initial hasty investigation of this case. A case so horrific, the whole world began watching right away because the whole world wanted to know, how could a seemingly loving father do something so horrible? The very family members who trusted him, who counted on him, who relied on him, who loved him, and never questioned his love for them or his commitment to their family. Chris Watts took the lives of his wife, who was 15 weeks pregnant, his 4-year-old daughter, Bella Watts, his 3-year-old daughter, Cece Watts.
So I'm here with my little munchkins.
And the unborn baby that was going to be his very first son, baby Nico Watts. This crime is so horrible. People either refuse to even learn about it, and once they turn their heads and their attention to the story of this crime, they seem to not be able to turn away. I dare to say it's impossible to overestimate the strength of feelings, of passion, of opinions that people have about this case. Many of us feel a unique and peculiar bond to this case, to the family, to the Watts family, because we can relate to them. With this true crime case more than any other, we've heard more people say that they feel a strong connection to the victims, to the family, and to the victims' family members who are still alive. Now, you would think with a case as horrific as this that law enforcement and the prosecutor's office would share the same passion for pursuing justice as does the public, for the victim's sake and for the family member's sake. I mean, when you just look at the basic elements of this case, the murder of a pregnant woman, a 3-year-old and 4-year-old baby, and the way that the bodies were disposed of, it's absolutely egregious. There really aren't words that can describe how horrific this crime was. This is the kind of crime that causes us to put our faith and trust in the justice system and the prosecutor's office. Because after all, what more horrific crime could be committed by a human being? This is the kind of crime where if you give a crap about justice, you are going to make sure that the perpetrator of this crime is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, that all of them are. Meet District Attorney Michael Rourke. This is the man who accepted lip service as answers about this horrible crime that people to this day still cannot wrap their heads around. This is a district attorney who had no interest in pursuing complete justice for Shanann, Bella, Celeste, baby Nico, and their family members and friends. Okay, I just want to pause to read a few comments here. And hey, Timeless Mysteries, welcome. How are you doing? It's great to see you. Timeless Mysteries has a true crime YouTube channel. Do you just cover true crime or do other things too? Definitely check it out, and is here tonight. Timeless Mysteries says the 99 years, so that's Timeless Mysteries is referring to the sealing of the autopsies I made mention of earlier, okay? And this is an interesting and somewhat controversial topic. Coffee, were we possibly talking about this on Patreon earlier? I'm going to be doing a Watts Live, Patreon Live, I don't know, either Sunday night or at the very latest Thursday. And there's a few topics we have to discuss, and they are definitely going to be happening. I just have to get them prepared. It's basically on Patreon. We're not trying to be like the exclusive club, not doing that on YouTube. Oh, all you YouTubers, you can stay outside the door. We're out the red carpet for the Patreon members. It's just because there's certain things that you can't talk about on YouTube, guys. I've tried for 4.5 years. And I've learned when I've tried to talk about some things, it should be fair game because we are grown as adults. This channel is for people 18 years of age or older. So if you are under 18 years of age, honey, go get your passy and run off. You shouldn't be here. Tell your mama what you're doing. She don't want you to watch this. All right. But still, I've learned some things you cannot talk about as it relates to true crime, but especially, and I promise you this is true, this case. But that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it. No, it's taken me a while to figure out how to do it, but we have to do it on Patreon, just as how it is. If I want to keep my channel, and I do. The 99 years, it basically is going to be longer than the lifespan of anyone who knew the victim personally and could be harmed by any of those details that are found in the autopsy. Okay, so that sounds like a legitimate thought, but I mean, how often do we hear that an autopsy is sealed for 99 years? Anytime somebody, loses their life young, God, especially that young, my God. Rest in peace, sweet Bella, Shanann, baby Nico, and Celeste. You guys should all be here living out your lives right now. We are so sorry. But, anytime somebody is murdered, especially in such a horrific way, especially someone so young, I mean, the fact that they're gone is what hurts most. Like, let's just be real about that. I'm not trying to, argue your point or anything, Timeless Mysteries. What I'm saying is this is something that we want to discuss because it doesn't make sense and there is an answer there, but we don't know what it is. It's one of the many things that they don't want you to know. And this is one that where I don't know an answer. I mean, I don't really even have a clue. I just have guesses. There's some things that they didn't want us to know where I do have answers because we've worked really damn hard to find them. But this one I do not know. I just have guesses. But anyway, anybody who's murdered, what's going to hurt most is the fact that they're gone. And yes, of course, having the possibility of seeing those pictures. My God, I won't even allow myself to go there. I won't even allow myself to imagine or to hear some of the details. For loved ones, it is going to be re-traumatizing. But listen, anytime someone is murdered, that's part of what happened so disgustingly. I'll say, oh, it's just how it goes, but it is just what happened. I do think it's unique that in this case, those autopsies were sealed in secret for secret reasons for such a long time, but good comment. That's why I pinned it. Ooh, scary earthquake in Anchorage. Gosh, I hope you're okay. Wow, I didn't hear about that. Let's see. There are statutes that make some of these things mandatory. Well, I would like to learn more about that. And if you do know more about that and you want to tell us, please do. Or if you want to even come up, you're welcome to do that too. Timeless Mysteries again. As far as I know, it wasn't any significant damage. But, this is about the earthquake, which we do care about, honey, but I'm going to stay on topic. Hey, Nelda, it's wonderful to see you. MH says, the autopsy is sealed. I thought it was the medical records. I'm sorry. I totally misspoke. MH, thank you so much. Yes, that's what it is. Yes. It's the medical records. Thank you. I'm so glad that you corrected me on that. Hey, Daniel Wiley. It's great to see you. Welcome. Okay, I'm just going to keep playing this a little bit. I'll have to find some comments and pin them because I want to stay on topic. Just because I'm not always good about doing that. And I know that y'all, people that watch it, want me to stay on topic. I'm going to try. Help me.
Stop asking about it. She didn't have anything to do with it. She wasn't there that morning. She voluntarily cooperated with law enforcement. She provided us all the information. I'm not going to tell you where she's at. Stop. Leave me alone.
That was District Attorney Rourke commenting on Nicole Kessinger in March of 2023. The context is that he's on his wife's podcast, Survivor's Guide to True Crime, and he's scoffing about the popularity of the discovery files, saying that Weld County had to come up with a system to disseminate the discovery files and kind of, so many people wanted to read the discovery files for this case. He said that it's as recently as last week that he received an email asking to open the case to investigate Nicole Kessinger, and says a moderate estimate is that his office has received 5,000 to 6,000 emails making that same request. Let's see what DA Rourke had to say about Chris Watts' mistress after his sentencing in November of 2018.
Can you give us a better idea of her role in the investigation, how forthcoming she was, and how she helped?
She originally came forward and spoke to investigators on her own volition. Prior to the time, unfortunately, that she came in and spoke with investigators, she had deleted all of the information off of her phone that had any connection between her and Chris Watts. That hampered the investigation. That hampered our ability to get that electronic digital connection between the two. She was interviewed on multiple occasions. I believe that for the most part she was forthcoming.
It's clear that there are some major discrepancies between what District Attorney Rourke said in 2018 after the sentencing and then what he said most recently on his wife's podcast in March of 2023. In his most recent recollection, he says that she came forth voluntarily and she was forthcoming with the information that she gave to investigators. Yet in 2018, after Chris Watts' sentencing, he said that she hampered the investigation by not giving investigators all of the information. And then he says that he believes that she was forthcoming for the most part. Very different statements, Rourke. We know the truth about Nicole Kessinger, and we know which of his statements is the accurate one, the 2018 statement or the 2023 statement. And the accurate statement is the 2018 statement, and it's an understatement because we know Nicole Kessinger obstructed justice by destroying evidence. We know this hampered the investigation, and we know that she was absolutely, completely not at all forthcoming with investigators. Not at all, not whatsoever. But let's go ahead and set aside the mistress for a moment and just look at what happened with Chris Watts' plea deal. Now, first of all, it is not the district attorney's office that put that plea on the table and forced I'm so sorry. Okay, I just want to say one more thing about the medical records being sealed, and I'm kind of intentionally doing this because I accidentally misspoke in the beginning and said autopsy records. Obviously, we know those aren't sealed. We've all read them, or many people have, and if you haven't, oh, they're really rough. It's the medical records that have been sealed. So, there's a number of reasons people theorize why that is. For example, I'm going to give you a couple of them, and I'm doing this to make the kind of point. Valerie, hey, Valerie, it's so great to see you. It says, Kelly, do you think they did that because of the plea deal? Maybe, but I guess my question to you would be, what exactly about the plea deal would cause them to seal the medical records? Do you mean that Chris Watts wanted them to be sealed as a contingency of the plea deal? Well, hey, listen, if that's the case, I've got a real big problem with that, but it's a good thought, Valerie. I'm just thinking out loud as you said this, because District Attorney Rourke, as I'm going to make a point of several times throughout its live stream tonight, did absolutely nothing to create conditions, easy to meet conditions, difficult to meet conditions, any kind of conditions for Chris Watts to comply with in order for Chris to get this plea deal and, ostensibly have his life saved because they were taking the death penalty off the table. He was just like, okay, you want to make a deal? Okay, let's make a deal. Let's make a deal. Come on down, Chris Watts. He didn't say, just like with the Brian Koberger case, he didn't say, wait a minute, hold it. We want corroborating evidence here because you know what? We did a really shoddy investigation. And like Timeless Mystery said in a comment just a few minutes ago, he said, I'm trying to decide if it's an incomplete investigation or if it's cover up. Well, I think I have answers to that question, but I want you guys to come to a conclusion on your own by watching the material. But I'll be interested to see what you think at the end of this if you're all still here because I have 2 hours of material to cover. But he required him to do absolutely nothing. They got off as far as not having to go through the trial, not having all those ugly details exposed, because let's face it, okay, Chris Watts' case, I think most of us understand his personality well enough to know that one of the reasons he didn't want to go to trial is because he's a pussy ass bitch, excuse my language, and he didn't want the world to know what he did. What he did was horrible, and he was living, under this mask his entire life. And if this case went to trial, the whole world would see that, dude, bitch was wearing a mask because what he really looks like is ugly as it gets. So they didn't want to go to trial. So just on that alone, the district attorney had leverage power. And for so many other reasons he did. It is in the district attorney's hands alone. It's the only opportunity one that the justice system has to say, okay, hey, suspect, defendant, soon to be convict, if you want the plea deal, we need you to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. It's the only opportunity. The judge cannot require that. Nobody else can require that. District Attorney Rourke completely failed in that regard here. So if Chris Watts, going back to Valerie's point, I'm being a little long-winded, that, did they seal them because of the plea deal? Let's say if she means because Chris wanted them sealed, I'm all the more angry about that because why can he be calling the shots and, laying out conditions that need to be met is a requirement of the plea deal, and the district attorney did not. That would just simply disgust me. And then is a totally different theory. And, I'm even hesitant to read this on my channel, but I'm going to be brave and do it today. MH says, some folks think it was to protect the medical professionals who failed to flag certain abuse. Okay, so possible. I've heard people theorize on that before. And again, if that is the case, we have all the more questions that we need to be asking, right? And we have all the more anger to feel about this, because if medical professionals were privy to indicators of abuse of those beautiful children and they did not report it and follow the proper protocol to protect those children, that is fucked up, and there need to be consequences for their failure to protect the vulnerable people that they, by their profession, are charged with protecting. And if a court decided to seal those medical records to protect them for failing to protect the most vulnerable among us, shame on them all. So my point is, whatever the answer to the question is as to why those medical records were sealed, we need answers.
The defense and Chris Watts, the defender himself, to consider whether or not he wanted to take it and what it would cost him to take that plea deal and what he would be gaining as an advantage, which is normally how a plea deal works. What happened was the defense put this plea deal on the table, and let's be clear about it. It was District Attorney Rourke who accepted this plea deal unconditionally, without any conditions whatsoever. Over the course of the 3 years that I've had this channel, I have talked to a number of attorneys about this issue, because it's always burn my ass, quite frankly. Why did District Attorney Rourke not make Chris Watts tell them what happened when he decided to accept the plea deal that Chris Watts and his team put on the table? Why did he accept that plea deal without condition?
This is from the Law and Crime Network. There are some odd things about the circumstances surrounding the plea deal Chris Watts struck with prosecutors, according to Law and Crime Network's host and former Morris County, New Jersey prosecutor Bob Bianchi, head prosecutor. Circumstances that he would never have allowed to happen under his watch. Quote, "What I do find to be unusual in this case is that I would have required a proffer session with the defendant where he would have sat down. In order to be spared the death penalty, he would have had to spill the beans on everything from A to Z. We would have known what the motive is, which we don't know right now. And he would have had to have clearly allocated to court to go up and say, this is why I did it." A district attorney is doing their thing in the pretrial phase or in trial. They are doing their thing, hopefully for the sake ultimately of justice on behalf of the victims, and of course taking the family's wishes into account. And part of that job is finding justice for the people that they serve, the public who needs answers, who demand answers, who deserve answers to these horrific crimes. After all, this is how our justice system is founded. It's justice for the people and by the people. Did you hear that? For the people. Crime in a society is a very real thing to everybody in that society, not just those who are immediately impacted by that crime. And there are reasons that human beings need answers when such horrible, egregious things happen, like they did in this tragic case of the Watts family. The public, yes, does deserve answers. Here is District Attorney Rourke talking about this case and the decision he had to make in his wife's podcast in March of 2023.
Back to the night where I come home from work, I know that we're contemplating seeking the death penalty. And as the elected DA, that's my decision. That's not anybody else's. I'm going through a process of talking to law enforcement, community leaders, my own commissioners for budget reasons, her family, like I have talked about, senior leadership in my office, and my wife, because there's a recognition that this is the ultimate decision I have to make. I'm going to take somebody's life if litigation goes the way it should in this case.
So the gravity of this case is impending on District Attorney Rourke, and he consults, fellow law enforcement personnel that worked on this case, that had to do with budget decisions, the victim's family, and we're going to come right back to that, and his wife. Well, isn't that good to know? Now, discussing what District Attorney Rourke had to say about Shanann Rusick's parents had to say about pursuing the death penalty or not, the story changed from what had been told all along to, again,
what District Attorney Rourke had to say in this podcast that came out of March 2023. When this podcast came out, people were astonished to find out that District Attorney Rourke said when he was talking to the family in North Carolina, the decision was essentially split. And it was Frank Rusick that did not want to go after the death penalty, meaning it was Sandy Rusick who ultimately wanted a.
Now, I just want to make sure you guys are paying attention here because we are now talking about the mistakes that District Attorney Rourke made when he was talking about the conversations that he had with the Rusick family regarding whether or not Chris Watts' plea deal should be accepted, should he put one on the table, and also whether the death penalty should be pursued or not. And apparently, Rourke can't keep his story straight. Let me just go back a minute here.
Decisions, the victim's family, and we're going to come right back to that, and his wife. Well, isn't that good to know? Now, discussing what District Attorney Rourke had to say about Shanann Rusick's parents had to say about pursuing the death penalty or not, the story changed from what had been told all along to, again, what District Attorney Rourke had to say in this podcast that came out of March 2023. When this podcast came out, people were astonished to find out that District Attorney Rourke said when he was talking to the family in North Carolina, the decision was essentially split. And it was Frank Rusick that did not want to go after the death penalty, meaning it was Sandy Rusick who ultimately wanted initially, until, in my opinion, District Attorney Rourke talked her out of it, and you can decide that for yourself. I'm going to play some sound clips here. She wanted the death penalty until she was ultimately talked out of it.
Steve Wren, my chief deputy, and I flew to North Carolina and went to Shanann's parents' house to sit down with them in their living room to talk to them about the process, what they wanted to see happen, the realities of death penalty litigation in Colorado. And that's just not something you could have a conversation over the phone about. Ultimately, the outcome of that was a split. I mean, one parent wanted the death penalty. The other, Shanann's father, wanted us to make sure that this defendant never saw the light of day. And ultimately, he did plead guilty to everything we charged him with.
Now, how such a decision is arrived at and what is said behind closed doors and then how it is portrayed to the public may really not be any of our business, and I can certainly admit to that. But what I do think is our business is how this case was treated altogether, big picture, throughout, by District Attorney Rourke. When he, in March of 2018, all of a sudden came out and offered that information that flew in the face of everything everybody had been told about why the death penalty was not sought, it was because Sandy Rusick, in her big heart and all of her grace, did not want death for Chris Watts, or she did not want to make that decision on his life that he made for her family. And I don't judge her at all. However she felt about the situation, my gosh, bless her heart, there is no judgment at all from me. But to come out on in a podcast in March of 2018, over 5 years after this tragedy occurred, and kind of flip the script was a little bit strange. Now here is Mrs. Sandra Rusick, Shanann's mother, speaking at the sentencing hearing in November of 2018. You'll just notice that what she says here, although I believe absolutely heartfelt and our hearts go out to you, Mrs. Rusick, is different than what District Attorney Rourke had to say in 2023 about how the parents fell regarding whether to pursue the death penalty or not.
Okay, now I just want to say I want to read this comment here from Mary C. And this is a really important point. Mary C., welcome. How are you doing, my friend? Says, wasn't that before they knew the real details, though? And yes, it was. And this is an absolutely critical point you are making. And the topic that we are talking about tonight, this Chris Watts horrific crime, what they didn't want you to know, having to do with the cover-up and the potential accomplice. Potential accomplice. Woo, got that out. Okay, so yeah, at the time when Shanann Watts' parents even weighed in about how acceptable it was or was not for them to not authorize, but say that they give that they bless the district attorney to go ahead and accept that plea deal and take the death penalty off the table, they were under a completely different impression of how this crime went down than what actually happened in reality. And that really is such a good point, Mary. See, that is one of the key parts of the whole issue, and we're going to come back to that as we go along tonight. And then that goes to the question that Timeless Mysteries kind of was posing. Was it a cover up or just an incomplete investigation? I think when you put that all together, you might find some answers, at least in your own mind. Maybe, objectively.
I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. They will always be protected by God and his mighty angels. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that he has mercy for you.
And now, listen to District Attorney Rourke talk about the final piece of the sentencing agreement, which is the plea deal that he accepted, that Chris Watts and his defense team put out there. And it's that Chris Watts won't face the death penalty. But, he goes from A to Z and skips everything from B to Y in the middle. He doesn't want people to ask, well, why did you not hold Chris Watts accountable? Why did you not put a condition on accepting the plea that he so willingly put out there? And in my opinion, he puts the hook on the Rusick family while he's peddling a political agenda and really paying no mind to justice in this case. This has always bothered me so incredibly much.
The final piece of the sentencing agreement calls for the district attorney's office, myself, to agree that as a result of his plea of guilty, that he will not face the death penalty. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions about that, so let me address that right up front. Present here in the room with us today is Frank Rusick, Sandra Rusick, and Frank Rusick Jr., Shanann's brother, mom and dad. Mr. Wren and I flew out to North Carolina about 3 weeks ago and spent quite a bit of time with the Rusick family talking about the state of the death penalty in Colorado, the realities of the death penalty. We explained to them the extraordinary delays that currently exist in the state of Colorado as a result of, in part, the actions of our current governor. We discussed the fact that an individual by the name of Nathan Dunlap was convicted and sentenced to death in 1996 and is still alive today. We discussed all of the possible consequences, delays, penalties, timeframes, and I hope I'm saying this accurately. I know they'll correct me if I am wrong, but they were very strongly in favor of a resolution in this case, short of the death penalty.
Hey, if you're the one guy in the world who's been entrusted with the responsibility of securing justice for Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico, but your heart's just not really in it for some reason, well, at least we all know that you have some meaningful connection to those precious victims who lost their lives far too soon in the most horrible way one can think of.
And just in case you can't hear the seeping sarcasm, I want to point out it's here as I'm talking about this.
At the hands of somebody that they loved and trusted. In this excerpt you're about to hear from the podcast A Survivor's Guide to True Crime, District Attorney Rourke is talking about why he did not show up at Survey 319, why he did not go to the actual scene of the crime, or at least the scene where the bodies were found, and why he did not want to actually see with his own eyes the horror that was caused when this crime was committed. And in doing so, he remarks about seeing some of the Facebook videos that so many of us have seen that Shanann proudly put on her Facebook page, where you got to get a little inside look into the lives of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. Hear what he has to say about that.
Bella and Celeste were, like I said, 3 and 4-year-old little girls with very long, glowing blonde hair who liked to run around the living room, dance, sing, and do cartwheels. We knew that because we had some social media posts that Shanann had put on her Facebook page or Instagram, one of them. And so I watched those, and I saw those little girls. And my own daughter at the time was about that same age. long blonde hair, doing cartwheels in my living room, despite the fact she knows that's a family rule not to. And there was an immediate connection that I felt with those little girls because of my daughter.
This case was so extraordinary, both in the career history of District Attorney Michael Rourke and in the history of, well, crime occurring in the world. It's hard to understand how he can get these details wrong, how these two little girls did not make an indelible and perfect impression in his mind that will last forever. District Attorney Rourke's treatment of this case was not.
I noticed that many of you are picking up on it. I'm probably, for a lot of people, wouldn't even have to point this out, but I know, well, for me, it just really burns my ass. So I'm going to point it out once again. So in case you were chatting and maybe thinking about something else, or, your dog was barking or something like that, District Attorney Rourke was just talking about how this case really hit home for him. It really, had a place in his soft, warm, gushy heart, because Bella and Celeste reminded him so much of his very own daughter. When he was looking at the pictures of them with their long, flowing blonde hair, doing cartwheels across the living room, it made him think of his own daughter. Well, guys, I absolutely adore Bella and Celeste. Like those victims, I know so many people feel a connection with them and, want to defend them and all of the victims and, make sure they get complete justice. And you just, feel like, almost like they're your own blood, right? We love them. But one thing they did not have was long, flowing, any color hair. And another thing neither of them could do was a fucking cartwheel. At times they could barely even sit up or stay awake. But without going too far down that road, maybe if you want to have that discussion, we'll have it on Patreon because YouTube don't like it. Michael Rourke's characterization of Bella and Celeste having long, flowing blonde hair, doing cartwheels across the living room. So he's recollecting, for the press or whoever he's talking to, or his interviewer, who was his wife at that moment. Something that he's remembering about is he was, working on this case. Those don't exist. That video doesn't exist. Those pictures don't exist. He fucking made it up. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. How disrespectful is that? It's as though he called Bella and Celeste, Susie and fucking Maya. It's horrible.
The only thing that went wrong with this case after this horrible crime happened. The injustice that lingers and looms around this case is unacceptable. It's hard to even imagine an alternate universe where we could say, damn, oh my God, what a horrible crime. Well, at least we know the investigators left no stone unturned, and the people responsible for that were prosecuted to the fullest. There would be some sense of peace. Instead of getting that sense of justice and peace that we long for after seeing something so horrific happening, we don't get justice and peace, and rather we're left with things like this.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm really trying to help you guys. I need you guys to help me too. Like,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
do this as a team, but just don't.
So
fucking let me down,
the
please.
reason why we can't, like, I did think about this yesterday, that I would like to sit down with you once we have your text messages and the phone calls, and we can put them in some type of easily looking, that we can sit down and look at them and compare them, and we can kind of get the context of how everything was going that night. I would like to do that with you. Unfortunately, so the download that we got yesterday is going to take multiple days to be analyzed. I probably won't have it back till next week. And then because you guys did have so many text messages.
I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt Kevin Koback. I'm sorry, but we'll go back to that. But Timeless Mystery. And again, guys, check out Timeless Mysteries True Crime channel. Says Rourke is still a human, and the death of a child is going to make any parent think of their own child, despite their differences. I thought it was a very human thing for him to say. So my exact point is basically the opposite of what you're saying here. Of course, any parent, any human is going, okay, let's go parent. Any parent, the death of a child is going to make them think of their own. Absolutely. And you can just, make that point by saying that, but to go and recall all of these false details about the girls that are so off base tells me personally that what he's saying is just lip service. And why would you provide lip service if you had real feelings, if he felt a real connection to those girls, if he really gave a shit, he wouldn't have to make up all of those details. He would just express in his own way from his heart, because how could you not, that he cared. The only reason you would have to go so far as to make up those details that are completely inaccurate, like so many other things that come out of his mouth, is because you're lying. And that to me is really alarming and super disrespectful. Let me go back just a minute.
At least we know the investigators left no stone unturned, and the people responsible for that were prosecuted to the fullest. There would be some sense of peace. Instead of getting that sense of justice and peace that we long for after seeing something so horrific happening, we don't get justice and peace, and rather we're left with things like this.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm really trying to help you guys. I need you guys to help me too. Like,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
do this as a team, but just don't.
So
fucking let me down,
the
please.
reason why we can't, like, I did think about this yesterday, that I would like to sit down with you once we have your text messages and the phone calls, and we can put them in a some type of easily looking, that we can sit down and look at them and compare them, and we can kind of get the context of how everything was going that night. I would like to do that with you. Unfortunately, so the download that we got yesterday is going to take multiple days to be analyzed. I probably won't have it back till next week. And then because you guys did have so many text messages, one of my analysts is working on getting those in order, so we can put something together where we can actually sit down and discuss it. But I do think that's something that I want to do in the near future, sometime probably next week.
I mean, I can do that. I don't mind giving you guys my time. I just need you guys to, like, help me with my employer and try to just help me brace for this media thing.
I'm with you. We definitely need to accelerate the case, because the more it takes, the less sure that they are of situations.
He murdered her. She's out of the picture. You're never going to know if she was pregnant. If he can get away with murder, you're not going to. I got divorced from my wife. You say, do you understand what I'm saying here? If she's gone,
Don't lead.
Hypothetically.
Please.
Yeah.
Don't
Hypothetically.
lead
If she,
Okay.
you understand where I'm going. If
Right,
you
but
didn't know.
You're leading into questions that are nothing with your.
If you didn't know, though.
Wait, Nick.
That she was there.
Did you hear what I said?
I'm following.
Stop asking about it. She didn't have anything to do with it. She wasn't there that morning. She voluntarily cooperated with law enforcement. She provided us all the information. I'm not going to tell you where she's at. Stop. Leave me alone.
As I've talked about extensively in a number of videos on this channel, and many other people have talked about and well know, the investigation in this horrible case was lackluster. There were definite problems. Here's an example of one of those problems. While we are left with a lot of questions about the way that Nicole Kessinger was treated, the things that she said, and the way that she interacted with her interviewer, CBI's Kevin Kobach, we did not.
I'm so sorry. Moderators, I don't know if you got rid of Roy Page 1970 yet, but dude, get the fuck out of here and get a life. This person has been commenting horrible things about Bella. So the first video I made on this case was about Bella. Since I started this case 4.5 years ago, and comes back with different screen names, and I always know it's the same person because he calls her Chris Watt Jr. shit stains. And please stay the fuck away from my channel and go get some professional help. Really, seriously, you need it. Please.
Have answers to things that were right within our grasp in the name of justice for the victims. One of these examples is the way that Chris Watt's truck was thought about and was handled in the investigation. In the discovery, it is noted that Jane, the dog handler's dog Cody, showed interest in Chris Watt's work truck. Let's take a look at the discovery as it pertains to Jane's dog and Chris Watt's work truck. On page 84 of the discovery, this is from Officer Catherine Lines. I entered the home with Jane and her canine, who she stated is a cadaver dog. As we moved through the home, Jane explained what type of scent the dog alerts to. Jane mentioned several times that the scent from people pools and collects in areas. The dog did not locate any human remains. The search continued from the neighborhood clubhouse west, then north, circling back to the home without success. Jane's dog was later taken to Chris Watt's work truck, which was parked just east of his home. Jane stated that the dog detected but gave no hard command. However, the dog did not enter the vehicle, and the doors to the vehicle remained closed. Now, on page 87 of the discovery, from Officer Perez, Supplement 14, it says, Christopher's work truck was parked just northeast in front of the house on the north side of the street facing west. One of the dogs was taken to the work truck, and Jane advised the dog showed interest in the truck. Jane stated the dog did not alert for any human remains inside the vehicle, but the dog caught the scent of one of the 3 missing parties. Command staff was advised. They never bothered to go inside of the work truck. The truck was locked, and, well, could they just have asked Watts for the keys? Well, no, because it's not truly his property. The work truck is the property of Anandarko, but since the dog showed interest outside of the truck, you'd think it would be critical that they went inside of that truck, but no. They didn't even bother to get a warrant to go inside that truck so the dog who showed interest outside the truck could go inside the truck and see what the dog found in there. Certainly, given the story that we've been told, that Shanann and Bella and Celeste were taken from the Watts residence to Survey 319 in that truck, the dog would have hit. There should have then been a forensic investigation of that truck, and evidence would be found. So putting the situation with the dog aside, evidence still was obtained from Chris Watts' work truck. After the truck was taken, after Chris Watts was arrested, and the house and his property was searched as a crime scene. Take a listen to this.
Chris, did Shanann do something to them?
No, I don't know.
I'm serious.
I have no clue.
No, you would have known because they didn't leave the house. Did Shanann do something to them, and then did you feel like you had to do something to Shanann?
They were at the house when I left. They were there.
They weren't there. They didn't leave. They vanished.
They were
The
dead.
only way they could have left is in your truck.
There's no way, because, I didn't just throw them in my truck.
You know your truck has GPS,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Because you told your boss,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going through separation, I'm maybe staying
Yeah.
at a friend's house, whatever. You know that thing pings every 10 seconds?
Yep.
So we will know exactly where you went.
And your company's giving that to us.
So there, you heard Colorado Bureau of Investigations Tammy Lee say it herself. She knows that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste left in Chris Watts' work truck. The investigators know that. There's really no other way they could have left unless they left through the back, which some people keep open as a possibility, and we really cannot rule it out since this case was not completely investigated. You might be surprised to know that although we know very little from an investigative standpoint about what happened inside of Chris Watts' work truck, meaning we haven't seen the results of any evidence that's been processed regarding the work truck, you might be surprised to know that evidence was actually collected from that work truck. Listen to this from the discovery. So going down to the 3rd paragraph, after a brief discussion, it was decided that CBI would... I just need to let you know that this is super important where we're talking about here, the evidence that was obtained from Chris Watts' work truck, and then CBI's failure to analyze that evidence. It was already obtained and ready to go. In fact,
It was on September 6th, I'm going to tell you in a minute, 2018, just a couple weeks after the murders happened, that CBI sent Dave Baumhover a letter saying that they were refusing the evidence from inside the work truck to analyze. Go make that make sense. Here's the details.
Photograph, collect, and package all evidence located. CBI would also use adhesive-based rollers and collect any possible hairs, fibers, and other trace evidence from the Ford truck in an attempt to determine any recent possible occupants of the vehicle. What I find to be of particular interest is the notation that the adhesive rollers collecting evidence, also known, guys, as trace lifts, was for the purpose of detecting any possible passengers or people that were transported in that vehicle.
Now, you may be asking, well, what exactly was taken from Chris Watts' work truck as far as evidence, and what happened to it? What did we find out? Well, I hate to disappoint you. Listen to this excerpt from the discovery file.
It should be noted that on September 4th, 2018, while running through the evidence submission list with lab tech Patricia Lopez, several items were listed that CBI Lab ultimately did not wish to take possession of at that time. Those items are crossed out on the evidence submission form, which has been added to the case file. The refused items are as follows. I'm going to read the last three items. Driver's side seat cover from work truck. Trace lift from center console of Chris Watts' work truck. And trace lift from back seat driver's side of Chris Watts' work truck. The items that were not taken by CBI are transported back to the Frederick Police Department and checked into evidence. Nothing further. So, my friends, what that means is...
So, did y'all get that? The evidence that CBI refused, that was already collected from the investigation, the people that were working the investigation, that CBI refused to have analyzed in a lab, not on November 6th when Chris Watts struck the plea deal. When Timmy says, oh, when he pled, or when he confessed, pled, I think those are synonymous there. It stopped the clock. No. Actually, 2 months to the day, the clock was stopped 2 months to the day prior to that, at least in my opinion, when the Colorado Bureau of Investigation refused in writing to analyze the evidence that was collected inside Chris Watts' work truck, because that evidence was critical. It would have told them, who was in the truck that night, if they were alive, if they were deceased, if there was anybody in that truck besides Chris Watts' alive or deceased family members, and potentially a number of other important things that would have provided answers that are so desperately needed by the whole world, clearly, because we're still talking about this case not only on this channel, but everywhere, by everybody. We need answers. It's just how it is. And the answers were there, but for some reason, the head investigators who are in very esteemed positions in very important institutions in our society for law and order, and the district attorney failed to carry the ball over the finish line, when basically they were just playing against, I don't know, a bunch of third graders. I'm not good with sports analogies, but something's not right.
Oops. For the purpose.
Oh, wait.
September 4th, 2018, while running through the evidence submission list with...
I'm sorry, the date here is stated here was November 4th, 2018. I think that Dave Baumhover's response was on, I'm sorry, September 4th. I think Dave Baumhover responded on the 6th. Anyway, 2-day difference. So I just wanted to make that correction, though.
Lab Tech Patricia Lopez, several items were listed that CBI Lab ultimately did not wish to take possession of at that time. Those items are crossed out on the evidence submission form, which has been added to the case file. The refused items are as follows. I'm going to read the last 3 items. Driver's side seat cover from work truck. Trace lift from center console of Chris Watts' work truck. And trace lift from back seat driver side of Chris Watts' work truck. The items that were not taken by CBI are transported back to the Frederick Police Department and checked into evidence. Nothing further. So my friends, what that means is the trace lifts that were taken from Chris Watts' work truck for the purpose of determining if any other occupants were in that truck, that evidence was actually collected. But CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, chose to not send that evidence to their labs to analyze the evidence to determine what DNA could be found, what hair could be found, what other evidence, trace evidence could be found that would decisively identify what, if any, occupants were in Chris Watts' work truck, and they could also determine if those occupants were alive or deceased.
It should be noted that on September 3rd, 2008. Okay, wait, hold up. Some of you, stop thinking, stop typing, listen to Mama Kelly here, okay? So, I know that some of you are saying, oh, excuse me, I'm like choking. Okay, I need to get a drink. Some of you are saying that, they didn't follow up with the investigation. They didn't go as far as they should have with the investigation. It was incomplete due to, laziness, funding, whatever, and maybe there's always issues of funding and money and things like that. But I don't think that the steps that they needed to take to do a complete investigation were going to be like bank breaking expensive. Okay. Listen, that maybe at some point that was an issue. Cost becomes an issue at some point for everything. Right. But okay, I'm going to pick on you, not pick on you. You know what I mean? I'm going to highlight this because Jennifer can take it. Not that I'm picking on you anyway, but I'm just going to, I know you're not sensitive. Not that it would matter. What am I talking about? She said Tammy Lee admits it. Once Chris confessed and pled, the funding stopped to investigate. Yes, that's right. That's totally right. The funding did stop at that point, or the majority of it. But listen, that is not the important thing. That would happen in any investigation. The important point that I'm making here with the timing of when Colorado Bureau of Investigation refused to analyze the evidence that was already collected in Chris Watts' work truck. The resources were already put into it. The man hour was already put into it. The time was already put into it. The evidence was already collected. The hard part was done. Largely, a costly part was done. It was there, ready and waiting. Yes, is analyzing forensic material to lab, is there a cost to it? Of course there is. But it is and yes, there is man hour and you have to use the labs and everything. But the cost, we could say, I'm just, guesstimating, was at least already half covered with all the resources and the manpower that went into just getting that evidence. Just going ahead and then analyzing it wasn't going to be this exorbitant additional cost. So we cannot say that that was the reason why they didn't do it. This is material fucking evidence to this case, to solving this case. You have it. Oh my God. Imagine how many investigators for how many crimes in this country or across the world would give anything to have already obtained the evidence, the material evidence that was needed to solve a triple, quadruple homicide case. To already have that. Now, all they have to do is fucking send it to the lab and analyze it. For good law enforcement professionals, that is like a dream come true. They had that all here, and they said, nope. At that point, cost ain't a thing. Your job is to solve this, take the next step and do your fucking job. I mean, it's a no-brainer. So it was September 4th, let me reiterate again, when they refused to analyze this already collected evidence that would have definitively determined who was in Chris Watts' work truck that night and if those people were alive or deceased at the time, and if anybody else was in that work truck, in addition to potentially other things that would be critical to solving this crime. And they didn't do it 2 months before the plea deal. So when Tammy Lee says, oh, he stopped the clock when they took the plea deal and the confession. No, yeah, maybe as you're saying, that's when the official funding stopped. But the clock for the investigation actually doing investigating stopped way before. And I can point to this date, September 4th, when CBI refused to analyze the already collected evidence as being a benchmark. When, the stance that was taken was, we're not investigating this. We don't want to. And we have to ask why that is.
18, Dave Baumhofer wrote a letter to the CBI, Bureau of Investigations, Data and Evidence Analysis team, asking for several items to be analyzed among the evidence that had been collected in the investigation. All the items from Chris Watts' work truck were refused for analysis the very next.
Oh, guys, you're killing me. Once again, picking Jennifer. So talking about, I just feel this is a really important point. That's why I keep coming back to it. Tammy and Coder felt cheated. That's why they had to go back to Wisconsin. And I do think that they genuinely wanted some answers to this. I do think that this was certainly, confusing, confounding for them, because this really is an extraordinary case. And I do think that they wanted to have those answers. But the driving reason for going back to Wisconsin was to understand what really happened, because what they had determined conclusively through their investigation, because the investigation was incomplete or botched up for a reason. Go ahead and take your pick. I know what mine is. I'm telling you all the reasons for all of this. It didn't make any sense. The narrative that Rourke was going with, that he told Shanann's family, was that they were all murdered at the house. And then they were, all three of them, deceased, put into the work truck. And that was why it's so important to analyze that evidence. If they just fucking analyzed that already collected evidence, they would have known if that was true or not. That's all they needed to do. But instead of actually confirming that through scientific forensic measures, like, Rourke just decided to go with that. So the narrative that they were all murdered at the house and they were all taken deceased out to 3319, in a lot of ways didn't add up. And Tammy and Coder understood those inconsistencies. But as you're going to find out, I think it's later, according to some people that are inside this case, and by that I mean the Rusick's attorneys, even though now Shanann's family will not say that they believe to any degree that Nicole Kessinger was involved in this, but her attorneys say that the reason for them to go out to Wisconsin to do that interview was to see if they needed to continue to further investigate this crime as a whole, and specifically Nicole Kessinger. That was the reason.
Day on September 4th, 2018. When I realized the dates that this happened, it absolutely blew my mind, since September 3rd and September 4th are just about 3 weeks after the tragedy occurred, and Chris Watts did not plea until November. So what were they doing, refusing any kind of evidence related to this horrible, tragic crime, especially having to do with Chris Watts' work truck? What are they hiding? It's funny how at certain benchmark times after this horrible crime was committed, certain things went missing. For example, from Shanann Watts' Facebook page, certain things were no longer able to be located a short time after this tragedy, and then additional things as time went on. Things are not able to be located through even the most thorough of web searches when you try to find information out in a general information search on the internet. It's really strange. It seems that some things, including Chris Watt's mistress herself, went completely and fully missing, poof, vanished from the face of the earth. These are some of the posts from Shanann Watts to her Facebook page that were made on August 12, 2018 that you cannot find now. They went missing very shortly after this tragedy happened. Ready to get home to Chris and the girls, she wrote around 3 p.m. on August 12th, the day before the murders, while she was in Arizona on her Thrive trip. And then at 5:20 p.m., she wrote, same day, August 12th, felt the baby move twice this weekend. I wonder why these posts were scrubbed from the internet shortly after this tragedy happened. They've been removed from the history books. I'm sure whoever removed them, and for the reason they were removed, they certainly hoped that nobody was going to continue to look into these issues, to try to find the things that were hidden by, well, who hid them anyway? When we do the research, the comparisons over time, we can see what items went missing, when, and not always where, but we can start to put all those pieces back together. I personally believe it's relatively clear why specific things went missing at certain times since the morning of August 13th, 2018. I'll tell you one thing, things start to look very interesting when you closely examine what exists, what has been hidden, and what has been altered, what has been destroyed. You may or may not know that on page 283 of the redacted discovery, there is an evidence collection log that records the collection of the interview of Nicole Kessinger from, remember, this horrible tragedy that took the lives of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico happened on Monday, August 13th. So this is 2 days after. Nicole Kessinger had just given her first interview to the FBI on that day, on the 15th, in a park near her house with her doggie and her daddy both present. On this document, it states under the details, recorded interview of Nicole Kessinger, parentheses, and in all capital letters, protect identity, end parentheses, on August 15th, 2018. We're going to talk more about that. So listen, I believe that Chris Watts is completely guilty and he deserves to be in prison for the rest of his life, the rotten bastard, taking the lives of these beautiful people, his family members. There aren't even words, and nobody can comprehend what happened. What I have come to believe more and more as time passes is that his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, is somehow involved in this tragedy, and we already know, Kessinger, that she committed crimes in the investigation of this case straight away. She admits it herself.
So I removed it.
So you already said, but you removed text messages?
I deleted all of his stuff.
Yet investigators played softball with her, underhand pitches, every single question they asked for the entire duration of the interviews, for the entire duration of the 5 interviews she underwent with the FBI and Colorado's CBI. What exists in discovery, combined with what we learned about Kessinger's actions and behaviors in the days following the tragedy and what she was trying to hide while she was being interviewed by law enforcement, when we compare what is known to be true and the stories that she clearly made up when she was being interviewed, shows us that she is likely somehow involved in this horrible, horrible tragedy. And what does not appear in discovery may indicate her guilt even more so than what is in that discovery document within the 1,960 pages. So here's what's real funny about the discovery. There are a lot of important events missing from the date August 12th, 2018. That is the day before Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico were murdered in the wee early morning hours of Monday,
August 13th. It is a critical day, and there are so many critical details that are missing, from Shanann Watts' deleted post to Nicole Kessinger's conversations with other people besides Chris Watts, and the 111-minute phone conversation between Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger. Even though the very first item, can you believe this, in the official Discovery timeline is about Nicole Kessinger. It says on September 7th, 2017, Nicole Kessinger Google searched the name Shanann Watts.
I make this point again and again and again and again. As far as I know, I'm the first person I know of that made that point. Maybe somebody did, I didn't catch it, but I think this is an important point. The very first item on the official Discovery timeline, the very first item is Nicole Kessinger searching the name Shanann Watts on September 1st, 2017, even though investigators knew that Nicole Kessinger did also search Chris Watts prior to that, 23 days prior to that, on August 7th, 2017. So I wonder why is the very first item, think about this, on the timeline, Nicole Kessinger Google searching the name Shanann Watts. The next item is fast forward way in time to May. I'm sorry. No. May of 2018, the end of May 2018, when Shanann, the video of Shanann, showing her shirt to the camera, and then Chris walking in, and he sees the pregnancy test, and he finds out that Shanann is pregnant. Okay, so first item is Nicole Kessinger Google searching the name Shanann Watts, September 1st, 2017. The second item goes a year and a half forward to the end of May 2018, when Shanann is letting Chris know that she's pregnant with the baby that would have been Nico. And then the third mentioning on the timeline is something like 41 days later, I believe, a number of days later. I believe it's 41 days. 41 days later, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico were murdered. Interesting. First three items on the timeline. Kessinger searches Shanann, 2017, way before she's supposed to even have known Chris. Second item, Shanann announces she's pregnant to Chris. Third item, the family's murdered. Think about that.
Yeah. This is a full 9 months before Nicole Kessinger and Chris Watts maintain that they even met at Anadarko. How is this possible? This question has been asked so many times, and DA Rourke confirmed that that search, in fact, happened. The appearance of that search as the first item on the official Discovery.
Tell you guys that, and this is fact. This is something that we at this channel have learned through our research, investigation, verification of sources. Vetting of sources and verification of information. Okay, this is a fucking fact. Nicole Kessinger knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant when they started dating. Okay, so if we're gonna go by the official, they started dating time, which would roughly be their first known contact on record, which would be through Anadarko email on June 12th, 2018. At that time, we know for a fact that Nicole Kessinger knew that Shanann was pregnant. Now, even if we didn't do our own research and investigation and get independently corroborating evidence that has not been released officially verifying that, we would still know that was true, because we know that Shanann posted about her pregnancy on June 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. June 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. On some of those days, a few times during a day. 4 consecutive days, 4 days in a row, Shanann posts about her pregnancy publicly for the first time on Facebook. I'm pregnant. Here's all these videos, all these pictures, all of my excitement. June 9th, June 10th, June 11th, June 12th. We also know that Nicole Kessinger was a prolific Google searcher of shit that really was none of her business. and then shit she wanted to make her business. And that she had been Googling Chris and Shanann Watts since Well, Chris, we know at least August 7th of 2017 and Shanann September 1st of 2017. So just when we put those pieces together, if we are rational, logically thinking human beings, we know that Nicole Kessinger knew that Shanann was pregnant. Oh, because another piece of that puzzle is Shanann's Facebook profile was completely open and public. That's been verified by a number of sources. Never was made private. None of it was private. It was an open book. And so, that is just a fact. So on this channel, we need to proceed understanding that is a fact if we are going to continue to dive deeper into this and search for the truth and complete justice for these victims. And that is what we do here.
Timeline is a result of the forensic download of Nicole Kessinger's phone done by the FBI. It's a fact, and nobody can answer the question, why was she searching for Shanann Watts on September 1st of 2017? It must be important since it is the very first item in the official discovery timeline. I mean, come on. Seriously. In the eyes of the investigators, it must mean that's when this whole horrible event and the information connected to it really began. That's where we need to start looking. It's the starting point. The starting point is Nicole Kessinger searching for Shanann Watts in September of 2017. My God, that's just incredible. And they let her walk free. Although Nicole Kessinger's name is littered throughout the discovery timeline, starting with September 1st, 2017, and she appears in it all the way through, her name literally appears scores of times in that discovery timeline until, remarkably, Saturday, August 11th, 2018. The last mention of Nicole Kessinger until her mentioning goes dark the following day, that Sunday, August 12th, the day before the murders, is a search that she made after she and Chris went out on a date to the Lazy Dog restaurant, one location, and then another. That timeline entry states at 22:04 hours, so that's 10:04 p.m., having concluded her evening tryst with Watts, Kessinger searched the internet on topics like Chris Watts, Shanann Watts, Ronnie Watts, and 2825 Saratoga Trail. And then, all of a sudden, on Sunday, August 12th, Nicole Kessinger disappears from the discovery timeline. Not to be mentioned, not even once. Conspicuously missing is the 111-minute phone conversation between Watts and Kessinger that Kevin Kobach asked her about over the course of his 4 interviews with her, the 2 video recorded ones, the police station, and the 2 ones that were had over the telephone. He asked about that conversation a total of 9 times throughout those 4 interviews. 9 times, at least, as far as I could count. And it's very likely that I missed him mentioning it at some point because there's hours upon hours upon hours of interviews with Nicole Kessinger. He asked her about that conversation 9 times. 9 times. Investigators also asked Chris Watts about that 111-minute phone conversation. That conversation was so important in the minds of law enforcement that when Tammy Lee, Graham Coder, and Dave Baumhover visited Chris Watts in February of 2019 after he had started serving his time in prison after he was sentenced to 4 life sentences. So let's hear what Chris Watts and his former mistress Nicole Kessinger have to say about that 111-minute phone conversation that was much longer than any other phone conversation they had ever had. Notice how they use a lot of the same language, the same words. Let's first go to Tammy Lee and Graham Coder questioning or interrogating Chris Watts on August 15th, 2018, before his, well, what I believe to be is a false and partial confession. And they took a plea deal on that. Oh my God. I also want to note that it is a popular belief that
Chris Watts was not asked about that 111-minute phone conversation during this interview, that he wasn't asked until the interview at Dodge Correctional Facility in February of 2019. But we're going to see here that that's not true. He is asked about it by Tammy Lee.
What were you talking to Nikki about before your wife got home?
Before she got home,
You talked for like several hours.
I covered it. I mean, we talked a lot. Conversations, and just random conversations. We talk a lot.
Does Nikki know about any of this? Seriously.
No, she doesn't know, like, I mean, she knows, like, from the news.
Meat of this whole Let's get to the phone call on Saturday from 9 to 11. What did you guys, or pardon me, on Sunday from 9 to 11?
Yeah, we talked a few times. So, Sunday, I think so. I need to think. I can't even think.
Take a couple breaths and take a second.
Sunday night. I don't even know. I don't think I was like concerned about anything at that point.
You guys had had a nice meal the night before. You knew his wife was probably coming home late that evening.
Oh, you know what? I still don't remember what we talked about. Honestly, we talk about so much random stuff. It's so hard to pinpoint some of these things. I don't remember what we talked about. I do remember that was a long phone conversation, though. We probably talked about all sorts of stuff. One thing I do remember, though, that I didn't remember earlier when I was talking to Mark, so this is where I'm starting to remember little bits and pieces. I don't remember, yeah, I know. So the phone conversation, I don't remember what was in the phone conversation. Probably nothing of relevance, to be honest with you, but usually he talks to me when he's down in the basement in his bed before he goes to bed and before I go to bed. And I could hear the TV on, which I thought was kind of weird. I didn't ask him. I just heard it in the background. And I remember thinking, and it was right before we got off the phone, I was like, why the hell is he up? And there's no TV downstairs. So I was like, well, maybe, I don't know.
No TV in the basement where he usually calls you from.
Yeah, and I don't know how many TVs they have. I've never.
We have gone over how investigators and prosecutors went out of their way to not dig deep into the evidence, to not really investigate this case at all, to not prosecute Chris Watts to the fullest extent of the law, while getting as much from him as they possibly could for the sake of the victims' family members, and for the sake of the public. That's how the law is supposed to work. But it didn't work in this case. We also know the inordinate amount of time and energy that was spent on Nicole Kessinger, interviewing her, coddling her, handling her with kid gloves, allowing her to hide whatever she wanted to hide, destroy whatever she wanted to destroy, and change whatever story she wanted to change to fit the narrative she saw fit in that moment, which of course is a narrative that paints her in the kindest light and makes her look like the savior, the counselor, the therapist, the teacher, the life coach, the philosopher, the nutritionist, the environmentalist, the engineer, the hard worker, fiscally responsible, the thrift tag shopper that she fancies herself to be. I think it's really possible that this whole circus surrounding the Watts case has to do with appeasing Nicole Kessinger and possibly her father for some unknown reason. Or do you think that there's more to it than that? Well, in the part one, we went over all of the things that District Attorney Rourke knew during the time of this investigation about Nicole Kessinger and everything else. We went over things that he knew when he decided, oh, it is time to accept Chris Watts' plea deal and just get this whole thing over with. And the things that he knew raise some serious questions. Let's do a summary of the part one because all of this information is critical. Number 1, Kessinger was treated as a witness from day 1. Number 2, the FBI protected her from day 1. Number 3, Rourke mischaracterized her reason for coming forward. Number 4, Rourke over-exaggerated the value of her statements in helping the investigation and ultimately solving this crime. Number 5, Rourke said himself that she hampered the investigation and that she was forthcoming for the most part. And finally, Rourke was aware of incriminating evidence that would show that Nicole Kessinger had guilty knowledge of this horrible crime and possibly more. Rourke was also aware of how the evidence in this case was handled, what evidence was collected, how it was processed, if it was processed or analyzed at all. He also was aware of the direction the investigation was heading in had he not accepted the plea deal from Chris Watts. We are left with these central questions. Why did District Attorney Rourke accept a plea deal from Chris Watts, putting no conditions whatsoever on that plea deal? Why did District Attorney Rourke and law enforcement protect Nicole Kessinger? Why was there a need to protect Chris Watts' mistress, and how did protecting her benefit law enforcement or the District Attorney's office? Since we know by Nicole Kessinger's own admission and District Attorney Rourke's statements, she did in fact break laws. She deleted evidence, she destroyed evidence, she obstructed justice. What was the full extent of her knowledge or involvement before, during, or after these horrific crimes? And since we know that she did commit offenses, why were serious, chargeable offenses completely ignored? Here's where things get tricky. To answer all of those questions, especially together, you can't really find an answer that makes sense. You can come up with things like, well, obviously people didn't really want to know what happened. People didn't want to know if there was more than one person involved in this horrible crime. Or they just didn't really care to know the whole story at all. They figured, no one was really going to be interested. The families weren't going to care. The lives didn't matter. So they just weren't really going to look into it too deeply, right? And that doesn't make any sense. That's absurd, right? If you've been following this case at all, it's likely that you've heard Tammy Lee's statement about, we had so much more work to do. It felt so weird.
We didn't examine all the evidence. We didn't interview every witness we needed to. We didn't do all of these things that you would do in a normal investigation because he stopped the clock.
Case of a missing mother and her 2 young daughters. Their father pleading for their safe return, but this morning, he's the one in custody.
And all of a sudden, I receive a phone call from Detective Baumover, and he said, hey, Chris is going to plead guilty to all charges.
Christopher Watts has pleaded guilty to killing his pregnant wife, Shanann, and 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, and their unborn son, Nico.
Whoa, wait, we're not done. We have all these things to do. We were relieved that it was going to be over, but at the same time, we felt like, in a sense, we didn't finish.
As Tammy Lee said, Chris Watts,
he stopped the clock.
In saying that Chris Watts' plea stopped the clock, that implies that prior to the clock stopping, prior to the plea, the investigation was being handled with great curiosity, vigor, and a sense of justice. And my friends, that was not the case at all. I am going to lay out the facts and the timeline for you right here and right now, so any confusion can be lifted and we can all be clear on the fact that that investigation really stopped more than 2 months before Chris Watts pled. If you're not ready to face that hard truth, I suggest that you pause and gather yourself right now, because I'm about to lay it all out for you real clear.
The only way they could have left is in your truck. The only way they could have left is in your truck.
Nicole Kessinger turned out to have information that I can best describe as being a bombshell.
Initially, you drew concern from me when you told me you deleted everything from Chris. I've already told you that. You understand why. There's no question as to why that might cause concern. So,
Okay, my friend. So there you heard Tammy Lee telling Chris Watts that she knows that Bella, Celeste, and his wife Shanann left their home in his work truck, and they were missing at the time. And then we have DA Rourke describing the information Nicole Kessinger gave law enforcement as being bombshell. And then we have CBI's agent Kevin Kobach talking to Miss Kessinger and saying, initially you drew concern for me when you deleted all of your text messages between yourself and Chris Watts, and there's no question as to why that is.
The investigators and the prosecution have given us some key facts about this case, things that they know for certain. Number one, they know that Chris Watts' family, who is missing, left the house in his work truck. We also know that
Miss Kessinger is a big part of this investigation, according to DA Rourke, bombshell information. And then we have the multiple interviews with Nicole Kessinger and Kevin Kobach in which she repeatedly lies about why she deleted her messages, the text messages between herself and Chris Watts, and any information that relates to Chris Watts on her phone. They also know that Chris Watts' work truck played a pivotal part in this crime. And these investigators, they don't really know what part she may have played leading up to, during the murders, or in the attempted cover-up of the murders.
Since the original recording of this Part 2 material, we have learned a lot about what the investigators actually knew about Nicole Kessinger's involvement, and you will learn that too. One unknown is about Nicole Kessinger's role in this crime, in the planning of the crime, in the execution of the crime, or the cover-up of the crime. Based on evidence that was collected in the days following the murders from Chris Watts' work truck, they know that when that evidence is analyzed, it's going to be very telling. Chris Watts' work truck was a central focus from the very beginning. Check out this broadcast here. It was breaking news in the 10 o'clock news on August 16th, 2018, the same day that Chris Watts supposedly confessed. Reporters were standing outside of the house, and they were reporting on Chris Watts' work truck being towed and evidence being taken from that work truck. This was in hours and days after the murders happened. They had the evidence. They had the evidence that would have started to answer the questions regarding Nicole Kessinger's role in this crime due to her proximity to the crime scene, as of course Chris Watts' work truck was part of the crime scene.
Hi, I am live right now outside the home of Chris Watts and Shanann Watts, and you can see behind me police are here right now processing the evidence inside the home. Denver 7's Jace Larson was able to confirm through sources that Chris Watts has confessed to killing his pregnant wife and their two little girls, Bella and Celeste. And we know that right now police are digging up the bodies, that they know where the bodies are and that they are looking for them right now. So right now police have been towing a truck that was parked just a couple of houses down. We didn't know it was connected to the house, but they towed that as well. And they just came out with the family's dog in a cage as well. So they also went in there with evidence bags, and they showed up right around 10 o'clock, right when we were working on the newscast.
Chris Watts' work truck that fateful evening, or rather the early morning hours of August 13th, 2018. It's almost too charmed, isn't it? If you're someone who wants justice for these victims, it is too charmed, because we've already established that it was determined Nicole Kessinger would be protected from day one, literally day one, by the highest law enforcement agency in the United States of America, by the FBI. So that certainly will get in the way of an honest investigation that seeks truth and justice And we always have to remember that when we're examining this case. The importance of protecting Nicole Kessinger is a sad reality of this case. So let's look at the importance of the evidence in Chris Watts' work truck in another light. It's important in a number of ways. If law enforcement was truly more concerned with protecting Nicole Kessinger at the expense of justice, or even if they didn't care if Kessinger was in that truck with Chris Watts, don't you think that they would want to corroborate his confession and prove scientifically that his confession was true? That the body of his deceased wife and his alive children were in the back of his work truck on that drive from Saratoga Trail to Survey 319? Wouldn't you think they would want to know that if they had the evidence right at their fingertips? Let me read you part of this supplement from the discovery. It should be noted that on September 4th, 2018, while running through the evidence submission list with lab tech Patricia Lopez, several items were listed that CBI Lab ultimately did not wish to take possession of at that time. Those items are crossed.
Okay, listen, and I realize we already went over this, but I'm just going to let this continue to play out because once again, I cannot emphasize enough times how important this is. Please tell me that makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys how important it is that they did not analyze the already collected evidence in the work truck? And thank you guys so much for your great comments. Please just, if you haven't yet, please hit the like. I'd really appreciate it. And again, I just want to say thank you so much, Sherry, for the $20 super chat. You're amazing. Thank you for the support. And I don't think I thanked verbally Sarah Bowman 3798 earlier for the super sticker. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I'm sorry I didn't get that earlier. I know I just pinned it and forgot to say thank you. Thank you. And also Clover 2025 is a new member. Welcome. And also Barbara Hall. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. It's getting late. I'm getting tongue twisted, but let's continue this.
Out on the evidence submission form, which has been added to the case file. The refused items are as follows. I'm going to read the last three items. Driver's side seat cover from work truck. Trace lift from center console of Chris Watts' work truck. And trace lift from back seat driver side of Chris Watts' work truck. The items that were not taken by CBI are transported back to the Frederick Police Department and checked into evidence. Nothing further.
So important that we understand the significance of what was done here.
The trace lifts that were taken from Chris Watts' work truck for the purpose of determining
All right, I'm going to skip forward a little bit because I did already play this little segment or something just like it a little earlier. And you guys are saying, yeah, we get it. Okay, that's all that we need to know.
Well, maybe, hey, right there it says they didn't wish to take it into evidence at that time, so maybe they analyze this evidence another time. But guys, we know that's not the case.
Again, I stress the significance of understanding this reality of why we know that that is not the case.
Because District Attorney Rourke went with the story that Shanann.
And this is the most maddening part, and this goes back to District Attorney Rourke and his wife's podcast and some other things we've already discussed, and then we're going to go deeper into it here too.
Bella and Celeste were all murdered in their home at 2825 Saratoga Trail until Tammy Lee, Dave Baumhover, and Graham Coder went to interview Chris Watts in prison after he was already serving his 5 consecutive life sentences on February 18th, 2018, over 3 months after his sentencing. At that time, Chris Watts then gave them a more complete confession, informing them of what apparently really happened that Shanann's life was taken at the home, and that sweet little Bella and Celeste made that car ride from Saratoga Trail to Survey 319, 45 minutes, alive, with their mother's body on the floorboard beneath their feet. And it wasn't until they arrived at Survey 319 did they take their last breaths.
The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed.
People who were involved in law enforcement, and they believe that this trace lift in DNA evidence would have determined if Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were in fact in that truck, if Nicole Kessinger or any other party was in fact in that truck, and if those occupants were in fact alive or deceased.
Determining that is of course important for the sake of justice on its own, but it also has importance regarding more far-reaching consequences of the way that this case, in my opinion, was improperly investigated and prosecuted, and we will discuss those during the course of this video. I will come back to this.
So the question remains, why did CBI choose to not analyze this critical evidence that had already been collected?
Now, just to be clear on the timeline, it was on September 4th of 2018 that CBI refused to analyze that evidence that had already been collected from Chris Watts' work truck. This is just a few weeks after the murders occurred, and it's more than 2 months before Chris Watts struck a plea deal on November 6th, 2018, and it's about 2.5 months before Chris Watts was sentenced. So to say that the investigative clock stopped when Chris Watts pled on November 6th, 2018, it's just a lie. It's a misrepresentation. This evidence, this critical evidence that would have revealed so much, was refused for analysis on September 4th, 2 months before the plea deal. Former Morris County, New Jersey prosecutor Bob Bianchi comments on the Watts case.
This is from 2018, right after Chris Watts was sentenced.
Listen to what he has to say very carefully.
I do want to bring in Bob Bianchi, former prosecutor, host of Law and Crime. So this reminds me a little bit of Ted Bundy when his mom refused to believe that her son would do such a
Former Morris County, New Jersey prosecutor Bob Bianchi comments on the Watts case.
This is from 2018, right after.
I have no idea why I just did that. I'm like losing it a little bit. Sorry, guys.
Chris Watts was sentenced.
Listen to what he has to say very carefully.
I do want to bring in Bob Bianchi, former prosecutor, host of Law and Crime. So this reminds me a little bit of Ted Bundy when his mom refused to believe that her son would do such a thing. Chris Watts' mom, Bob, is saying this didn't happen. He was coerced. What's your take?
Well, I mean, it's not unusual that a family member looks at somebody that they love. It does a really horrible thing. As a homicide prosecutor for many years, most of the families are in complete disbelief with regard to the fact that somebody they love committed a murder. So that's not unusual. What I do find to be unusual in this case, Susan, again, going back to my prosecutor days, is that I would have required a proffer session with the defendant where he would have sat down in order to be spared the death penalty. He would have spilled the beans on everything from A to Z. We would have known what the motive is, which we don't know right now. And he would have clearly allocated in court, got up and stated, this is what I did and why I did it. The only way he's going to get out of this, Susan, last point, is a belated assertion of innocence is not a basis to withdraw a plea. However, his lawyers didn't do any psychiatric examinations, and the mother points this out. And that could be a huge deal here because maybe he did go into a rage. Maybe there's an insanity defense or a diminished capacity defense. That takes it out of murder and makes it a non-death penalty case. That would be the only sliver of a basis that he could withdraw this plea.
Well, Jean Casares touched on this, and she said that in court they did ask him, and his statement was read saying that, yes, he admits to all of this, but the motive was not found. And I wonder if it would ever suffice, whatever motive he may have made up or done, because I can't seem to find a logical one for any of this.
Yeah, well, you rarely do in a murder case because a lot of times it's not something that we can understand. And while a prosecutor does not need to prove motive in any case, you certainly want that. In other words, to protect the file, to protect the belated assertion of innocence, I would have said to the defense attorneys, and they may have done this, but I would have demanded you come in, go fall on your sword, tell us everything A to Z so I can eliminate all these defenses of insanity, passion provocation, diminished capacity. So this way it's locked up in a box so that if you come after the plea to say, hey, I no longer want to take the deal, which happens all the time, you will not be able to get out of it because we have a very specific statement about the reasons why you did it, and we eliminated all the defenses. That did not occur here.
Bob Bianchi, thank you. Maybe it's his parents' way of kind of coping or wrapping their head around this. Thank you so much.
The following is from an interview with District Attorney Rourke right after Chris Watts' sentencing. This interview is filled with examples of why what he did, accepting, so to speak, Chris Watts' plea deal, was total BS.
I know this is hypothetical, but had Chris Watts not confessed in this case, how tight was this case? I mean, was there a lot of evidence out there? Because I know that as far as the murders, there wasn't a lot.
There was a lot of circumstantial evidence that really, I think, was strong evidence. When law enforcement shows up right at the outset, based on this call from her friend Nicole, saying, I need you to come check on the welfare of Shanann. When her car is there, her purse is there, her cell phone is there, the house is locked up from the inside in a way that no one could lock a door and run out a garage door, for example. No one could lock a door and run out a garage door, for example. The key code on the garage door didn't work. There was no way for a stranger to get in there, abduct them or anything else, signal to us that it probably, at that early stage, probably was a family member, probably was the defendant. But then you start to really look at the manner in which they were killed, where their bodies were dumped, his familiarity with that area, and I think there were a lot of pieces that could be put together even without him talking, but it certainly made it a much stronger case because he ultimately did give us at least a version of what he wanted us to believe.
Wait, what? Could you please say that again?
Because he ultimately did give us at least a version of what he wanted us to believe.
Yo, did you just say that his confession was helpful because ultimately he gave you a version of what he wanted you to believe? Wait, how is that helpful? He gave you, law enforcement, a version of what he wanted you to believe. And he didn't want you to believe he was a bad guy. So he gave you a version of this atrocity that wasn't even truthful. They had no idea what actually happened to Shanann, Bella, or Cece at the time of Chris Watts' plea, and until at least those 3 investigators went to Dodge Correctional Facility in February of 2019 to basically do some of the investigation that was never done under this man's watch.
Without him talking, but it certainly made it a much stronger case because he ultimately did give us at least a version of what he wanted us to believe, even though we know all of it wasn't the truth.
I'm sorry. What the district attorney said right here is an absolute joke. He says that his confession was helpful because Chris Watts gave law enforcement a version of what Chris Watts wants law enforcement to believe it's true. And then he follows it up with, although that we know that most of that even wasn't the truth. I mean, what did he actually say there? It's just word salad to obfuscate and confuse people so they're not looking at the real issues. I'm sure of that.
Do you think he's a psychopath or sociopath? And I don't know if he was actually examined and diagnosed at any point.
If he was, I don't know. Obviously, I don't have the ability to ask for that. From a clinical standpoint, I don't know. There is certainly something wrong with a guy who annihilates his family for a new love affair. There's something wrong with him. Again, from a clinical or insanity standpoint, certainly not. There were no signs of that at all. But how do you do this?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've been a part of several big cases, but is this one at the top of your list in terms of what you'll remember?
I know. Let me answer this one. It certainly is at the top of his cases that the public will remember, that the world will remember, which makes it very important, of course, that he is triumphant in this case, as any district attorney would want to be. But I think that is only part of this DA's alleged reasoning for not properly prosecuting this horrible crime. That's how I feel about it, at least. Just two more things about... Okay, just super quick. God, there's so much to talk about right there. But I also do just want to let you know, I'm putting something in chat right now, and it's an invitation to join Patreon, and there is a discount if you join this weekend. And if anybody joins, like if you get a membership, we will give a membership to someone else. It can be someone that you pick, like tag somebody in chat or somebody you know. You can just let me know who that is, and I'll make sure they get it. I'm able to do that with Patreon, whereas you can't do that with YouTube. So if you get yourself a membership, you'll be gifting someone else that same membership, and it'll be to them for 6 months. And there's a discount right now. Let me go ahead and pin that. I'm trying to grow, well, both the Discord and Patreon communities. Not just because, I'm trying to grow it for a business growth sense for myself, but because we truly can talk about so many topics that we are restricted in speaking about openly and in an uncensored manner on YouTube. And I think that's important. But, in order to really kind of get that fueled up and going and have it maximized and to kind of reach the vision with it that I have and that I want to reach, we have to just grow the community a bit. So that's the purpose. I just want you guys to understand that. So let me go ahead and pin that there. Yeah. So, join and give a gift. So let me know. And if you don't want to do it right now, you can email me at whatsobsession@gmail.com and just let me know if you want me to gift it to a random person or somebody that I know would like a membership, or if you have somebody in mind, and I'll make sure it happens, and I'll give you confirmation of that happening. What was said just in this portion of this interview, the interview is longer than what I'm sharing with you right here. But one of the most ironic things about what is discussed here is that District Attorney Rourke wouldn't know the answer to the primary question the interviewer has.
I mean, was there a lot of evidence out there? Because I know that as far as the murders, there wasn't a lot.
And the reason he would not know if there was a lot of evidence is because, as I pointed out earlier in this video, evidence that was collected was not properly analyzed by law enforcement. And this refusal to properly analyze evidence that was collected happened far before the plea deal was struck. Also importantly, that evidence would have told investigators if anybody else was a passenger in the car with him. But since that evidence that was collected was never analyzed and nobody knows where it is now, we might never definitively know the answers to the questions that analyzing that evidence that was already collected would have provided for us. The answers to so many questions were right within our reach, within the investigators' reach. Again, you have to ask, why was this evidence that was collected never analyzed? What would an analysis of that evidence have told investigators and the world? And is that information that somebody didn't want the world to know? I'm just asking. What do you think? Just as I was finishing up this part 2 of this little video series, Law and Crime Network came out with breaking news about Chris Watts. Although we here at What's the Obsession know that that is actually old news, I'm including here because I think it is going to bring this topic full circle. Listen to what Law and Crime Network had to say.
Since he went to prison in 2018, Nicole Kessinger has basically dropped off the map, preferring to avoid the public eye. Not surprising there. Police have never said that Kessinger had any knowledge about Watts' crimes. However, now it seems Chris Watts may be placing the blame on Kessinger for what happened. Because in recently published notes from Watts' cell out in Wisconsin, he was moved there, we've learned he labels Nicole Kessinger a Jezebel who destroyed his life. Watts evidently writes letters to God as a form of journaling. In one of those pages from 2020, he writes, "Dear Heavenly Father, I have backslidden. I am like a sheep gone astray from the flock and have fallen into a pit. The snare of the enemy has entrapped me. The words of a harlot have brought me low." Now, Dylan Tallman was in the cell next to Chris Watts for around a year. He was locked up on drug possession charges, and he told the Daily Mail that he and Watts became friends and studied the Bible together. The two apparently even planned to write a book together. But when Watts backed out of that deal, apparently, Tallman instead turned the writings into a series of his own books called The Cell Next Door. According to Tallman, Watts told him that Kessinger gave him an ultimatum on the night of the murders. It's your family or me.
Oopsie. Oh, guys, I was just thinking, I just had to say this about when I was talking about Patreon. We already have a lot of stuff going on over there, like a lot of stuff. We have like case files, all the documents for the Koberger case, for the Christina Formella case, for the Lauren Matthias stalker scandal shit show, bunch of stuff for tons of stuff, tons, and exclusive content and videos, and a couple videos, 2 or 3 on the Watts case that I couldn't simply never publish on YouTube for a number of reasons. Oh my God. So there is a lot of stuff going on over there for a membership. I'm not just like, oh guys, please be a member and you're going to get nothing in return. I just want to make sure that was clear because that would be really weird of me to ask you.
Was there an ultimatum? Absolutely, there was. So as we start to take a look at exactly what happened in the days, and the weeks, and the hours that preceded this horrible tragedy that annihilated Chris Watts' beautiful family, let's take a look at the timeline that led up to August 13th, the day of the murders. On August 7th, 2018, the Watts family altogether flies home to Colorado from North Carolina.
Ready? Set. Hold on.
It is on the next day, August 8th, that Watts deletes his Facebook account. It is also on that next day, August 8th, that Nicole Kessinger makes a Google search, "marrying your mistress." This day was significant to Shanann Watts for different reasons. This is a day when they were scheduled to go to the ultrasound where they would find out the gender of the baby. Now, this day ranges in experience so greatly between Chris Watts and Shanann Watts. I'm just going to go through all of the items on the timeline. At 7:24 a.m., Sarah Nudd, who's a friend of Shanann, asked Shanann if they were doing any better. Shanann replied, "No, it's so bad and I don't know what to do. He told me he doesn't want this baby and he's happy with just Bella and Celeste. He thought he wanted another one. I'm so sick to my stomach. Tried to have sex with him last night just to see if that would help him and he rejected me." Shanann said she hasn't cried this hard ever. Shanann added, "He said he feels like there's a lack of communication and it's not for me. I sent him 12 texts over the month begging him to talk to me. He fell asleep at 7 or 8. Shanann told Sarah, "I tried talking to him after rejection last night and me crying for an hour alone on the couch. He slept. I kicked his sorry ass out of the bed and I refuse to sleep on the couch anymore this week. Told him this morning not to come home today, and if he can't tell me the damn truth and what is wrong." Shanann continued, "We are supposed to go to the ultrasound tonight and he doesn't even want the baby. He'd abort it if I said it was okay." At 8:06 a.m., Shanann told Sarah he's said he's not having an affair. Sarah asked if Shanann was certain of this, of him having an affair, and Shanann replied, honestly, no, but what else would make him do a complete 360? We couldn't get enough of each other before I left. At 8:52, Josh Rosenberg, Cassie's husband, asked Chris Watts if he's excited for the ultrasound. Today's the day, right? Watts replied he just returned to work and added, yep, today's the day, I'm excited. Watts confirmed that the ultrasound was at 7 p.m. At 3:11, Watts made an unspecified modification to Shanann's contact information in his work phone. Now, it should be noted that this is right around the time that he would get out of work, and he did end up going to the ultrasound, but he was hung out with Nicole Kessinger after work and stayed with her right up until the moment that he had to leave for the ultrasound. At 19:25, this would have been shortly after Chris Watts left her apartment, Kessinger searched Google on topics related to marrying your mistress, as I had just earlier mentioned. That was the day. So that is going on while Chris Watts is at the ultrasound appointment with Shanann to find out the gender of the baby. Well, they weren't going to find it out yet. Someone else was finding out. It was Nicole Atkinson. It was going to be put in an envelope, remember? And they were going to have that gender reveal party. So this next item on the timeline would happen after Shanann and Chris went to that ultrasound. So this is how things went there for poor Shanann. So at 9:54, Shanann told Utoff and Cassie Rosenberg, he said that we are not compatible anymore. He refused to hug me. Jesus. Said he thought another baby would fix things. He said he refused couples counseling. Shanann elaborated. He said a lot of time to reflect on his feelings, Shanann added. He said he's going to work it out, but she didn't know how or when he would agree to counseling. Her friends offered support and suggestions to work this out. At 9:57, Josh begged Watts, bro, I'm waiting patiently, LOL, don't leave me hanging. Watts replied, LOL, envelope is sealed until next weekend. Josh asked if they were going to hold a reveal, and Watts said yes. At 10:19, Shanann told Utoff and Cassie, I will fight for full custody. Shanann said Watts told her he does not want to divorce right away. So whatever's going on there at that house that night, there's a lot of back and forth between Shanann and Chris that we will never know about. We will never know those details, but it's clear that there were very confused feelings, I guess, on Chris Watts' part, and definitely he was sending Shanann Watts mixed messages. And also I want you to note the hour here. They've usually gone to bed by then. I mean, this is like late for them to be having phone activity. Well, unless it was Chris with Nicole Kessinger, which was out of the norm. At 10:40, Shanann told the women, I can't afford 3 kids alone in Colorado. Shanann said their current home loan is on Chris's name. Her friends rallied around Shanann. At 11:08, so this is getting really late, Shanann searched Google on topics like emotion-focused therapy and couples therapy. So she's still hanging in there looking for an answer to their problems. So remember, this is the same day, the day that they were going to the ultrasound, where the baby's gender was going to be found out and sealed for their gender reveal party. Also on that day, Chris Watts deleted his Facebook account, very curious. And Nicole Kessinger, while Watts was at the ultrasound after he left her place, was searching for marrying your mistress. Now, what does that tell us? At this time, she still knew that she was the mistress. So now we're going to move on to August 9th. A lot of people have gotten the details for this day for ironing out the timeline a little wrong, and that's because there are some incorrect notations in the discovery, like Watts took off from work that day because Shanann was flying to Arizona. That didn't really happen until the next day. So I'm just going to go through the basics of what was going on that day to straighten things out, to just give you the vibe of this all-important week, the week that they returned home, the Watts family returned home from North Carolina. At 2:54, so that's 2:54 a.m.,
So this Shanann's up in the middle of the night, obviously thinking about a lot of things. And it says, Shanann told Addie that Watts refuses to hold her. And he has told Shanann it's because he's not there. He can't. Shanann also told Addie, I canceled the gender reveal. Nikki is going to tell me today. I need happy news right now. I said to him, how is this a few months? We are so intimate and what I thought was in love when I left. He said he had a lot of time to think. Addie asked Shanann if Shanann has gone through Watts' phone, asking if he was having an affair. Shanann replied, I did. He denied. No, I didn't look. He's deleting messages from his dad, and I'm sure he's not that stupid. Addie noted, none of this makes sense. It's not Chris. Then it's noted, frequently throughout the day, Shanann searched the internet for couples counselors. She also accepted a prayer chain focused on their relationship. Poor Shanann. It's 6:09 a.m. Shanann asked Watts, do you want to find out together with me tonight our baby's gender? His reply is not found in his phone. It only exists in Shanann's phone. He started erasing things from his phone that were from Shanann, like almost completely during this week. We wonder why is that. So after she sent Chris that message, he said yes, and then Shanann loved, put a heart on the yes. At 9:20 a.m., a log entry appears for the secret calculator in Watts' phone. At 10:06, Shanann shared an ultrasound image of her newborn son with Sarah Nudd. So the day after the ultrasound, that was a very chaotic day as far as, the different things that were happening for Shanann and Chris. She woke up in the morning. It looks like she barely slept, thinking about this baby and how she could keep her family together. Now we're going to move on to August 10th, but I just want to note that they got home from North Carolina on August 7th, and Shanann left for Arizona in the early morning hours of August 10th, meaning that Shanann was only home for like 2 and a fraction of a day the entire time that Nicole Kessinger and Chris Watts apparently were dating. It seems that Nicole Kessinger had absolutely no tolerance for this, and we have to consider that Shanann's presence in Colorado during the time she was dating Chris, the man she was so possessive of, when the woman she was so jealous of was in town, it had a serious impact on her. Well, we know it did now, and she would go to extreme lengths to not feel that discomfort of Shanann being around her husband while Nicole Kessinger was trying to have a relationship with him. It's also very petty and selfish, and it is such a shame that these 3 beautiful souls and baby Nico lost their lives because of these horrible, ugly human feelings that Nicole Kessinger held in her heart and held in her mind. In my opinion, let's return to the timeline. Then in the early morning hours of August 10th, that Shanann flies to Arizona. Her friend Nicole Atkinson picks her up early in the morning. They travel to the airport together and they fly out to Arizona for their Lavelle Thrive business trip or getaway. You'll soon understand why it's significant to note that it is also on this day that Shanann mentions for the first time that we know of from the discovery the idea of moving to the realtor and Meadows. And this is just because she and Chris had discussed that their finances were out of control and they might have to move out of the house at 2825 Saratoga Trail. It is on Saturday, the 11th, that Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger have their date at the Lazy Dog Cafe. It is at this time, and we are going to revisit this, that we learn through the interviews, through what Nicole Kessinger tells Kevin Kobach, that Nicole Kessinger presents Watts with a host of apartments that could be possibilities for he and his girls to move into. It is then on Sunday, the 12th, the day before the murders, that Nicole Kessinger sends texts to her best friend, Charlotte Nelson. And in these texts, for the first and only time,
does Nicole Kessinger mention Chris Watts to Charlotte Nelson? So think about this. It's a day before the murders and 6 weeks after they've been dating, according to them, that Nicole Kessinger finally mentions for the first time Chris Watts, her new love interest, to her best friend, Charlotte Nelson. It is also on Sunday, the 12th, that the 111-minute phone call happens. I made a note here on my timeline that refers to the discovery, and the discovery says, Saturday, August 11th, continued. 4 minutes after Chris Watts leaves Nicole Kessinger's apartment, Nicole Kessinger Google searches the names Shanann Watts, Chris Watts, Ronnie Watts, 2825 Saratoga Trail, and after this timeline event, Nicole Kessinger disappears from the official timeline for 43 hours, not to appear again on that timeline until well after the murders have occurred. On August 14th, the day after the murders, we know, by her own admission, Nicole Kessinger deletes all traces of Chris Watts from her phone. So let's take a much closer look at this accurate timeline.
And then the next day, I don't even know what days these were, sometime when he was out there.
Out there refers to the time when Chris Watts was in North Carolina with his family during the first week of August 2018.
He told me, we're putting the house up for sale as soon as we get back. And I was like, well, that was quick. And he was like, it's her, she's ready to go. And I was like, okay. And so I left it at that.
So the way Nicole Kessinger tells the story to investigators here, it's like, Chris Watts flies out to North Carolina, across the country, to see his wife and his children and their extended family, Chris's family and Shanann's family. And once he arrives out there in North Carolina to see his family, he's like, okay, well, this is done. This, separation that's been lingering for the past 6 weeks, as Kessinger and Watts would tell it with their timeline of when they met in their dating and courtship. That's just kind of been, kind of meandering along. But now that I'm across the country with my family in North Carolina, we've decided that we're going to kick into high gear. As soon as we get back, we're going to put that house up for sale. And she's like, okay, cool. All right, cool. That's what's up.
And then he got back and I started asking him, like, what are you going to do? Because the Colorado housing market is fire and you guys are going to sell this house like real fast. And I'm like, you need to start looking for a new place to live. And I'm like, where do you want to live? And I was really trying to help him out. I'm like, do you want to get a house? Do you want 3 bedrooms? So you have one and each of your girls have one. I'm like, do you want to, like do an apartment? Like, what do you want? Where do you want to live? And it was really exciting. Like, I liked helping him and I just wanted him to like,
Go in it, DC.
This is just one of the many times that Nicole Kessinger mentions how helpful she was in assisting Chris Watts in finding a new apartment after he declared that he and Shanann decided that they were going to move their separation/divorce into high gear. And as soon as they returned home from North Carolina, boom, house was going to go on the market. She was very, very excited, clearly, to help him find a new apartment. But with those of us who have followed this case, what we know is Chris and Shanann didn't really decide that they were going to put their house up on the market while they were in North Carolina, at least not because they were headed for a separation or a divorce. Perhaps they did talk about their finances. In fact, we know that they did, but we know that there was never any discussion of divorce. So where did this all come from anyhow? Could it be the pressure that Nicole Kessinger applied before Chris Watts left for North Carolina? Let's revisit that.
So the second time I went to that house, I'm not sure what day it was, but it was the weekend of the 14th. We had went out and we stopped there just real quick on the way back. That time I saw a picture of his wife and one of his kids. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, she's so beautiful. And I like took a step back and I was just like, why would he want to leave this? And I remember talking to him about it. And that was the first time that I tried to actually say, what do you think about not separating from your wife? Like I was like trying to push him to do it. And he seemed pretty reluctant to do it. He didn't want to. I kind of like backed away so we weren't hanging out quite as much. And we were still close, but it was just like I really wanted him to try.
When listening to what Nicole Kessinger has to say in these interviews, it's very important to apply context. What was said in the next breath after, the statement that you're currently focusing on, and what was said previous to whatever story Kessinger is telling. This context frames everything and gives her words actual meaning. So first, let's listen to what was said in her next breath. What were those words that followed? I really wanted him to try, in reference to his relationship with Shanann.
But it was just like I really wanted him to try.
And then in her very next breath, Nicole Kessinger says,
like I wanted to know that he tried and it didn't work.
Kessinger has a way of revealing herself. She says, I really wanted him to try. I really wanted him to try and then to know it didn't work. So then read, I can have that certainty in my relationship with him and move from position number 2, mistress, into position number 1.
Like he tried and it didn't work, and then he moved on.
Wow, what Miss Kessinger wanted out of that whole situation was very specific. I wanted to know that he tried and it didn't work, and so then he moved on. And this is much different than what she presents at first to the investigator, saying, oh, I saw this picture of Shanann and one of the girls, and I was like, oh, she's so beautiful. You have this beautiful life. I really just want you to try to salvage your relationship because it's a beautiful thing. I want you to try. No, she wants him to try and fail, so she knows unequivocally that he is all hers, all empanadas, without any interference from the wife. So let's just go back a little and listen to what was being discussed in that room before Nicole Kessinger even brought up what happened on July 14th, which, by the way, was a pivotal day in Chris and Nicole Kessinger's relationship. I suggest you watch the video that's in the cards right now. I'll link it in the description box. What was going on in that room that caused her to fess up, so to speak, about going to the Watts house on July 14th and seeing a photo of Shanann? She doesn't give up anything for free.
Like it's happening. It's going to happen.
Well, the text
Media's just
reiterate
gonna-
what you've been saying all along, so it's not like.
Well, they do. That's the other thing, too. I mean, that's kind of a good backup. Yeah, I'll give
I
it
think
to him.
you hit the nail right on the head. There's reasons why we want everything. It validates things that we know. I'm not gonna come out and tell you that if you tell me something today, we'll validate it with your text messages, whether it's the ones we have now
I
or the
will-
ones you're gonna give us.
I'll give it
Certainly.
to him. If you want to go get him.
I want you to read this, is what I want you to do before you decide that, okay?
So the second time I went to that house, I'm not sure what day it was, but it was the weekend of the 14th.
It's happening. They are asking for her phone records, and they are making her well aware that they are going to be looking at her phone records and utilizing her phone records, whether they did or not. In reality, who knows at this point, but she's like, oh, it's happening. She had previously told law enforcement she'd only been to Chris Watts' house once, so now that it's put in her immediate awareness that law enforcement is going to know where she was on what date, she probably decides, well, this is probably a good opportunity to fess up, kind of, because I'm still going to tell a whole lot of lies.
I don't know. This is what he told me he wanted. So I was like, well, I will help you do the research. But another thing that I really took care of was to be like, where is she moving to? I was never like, you know what, screw your wife, try to get full custody. None of that bullshit. It was always just like, you know, I'd ask him, I'm like, well, what kind of custody you guys gonna have? Because he at work, they're about to switch his schedule. So right now he's like a Monday through Friday, and they're about to switch these guys to 8 days on, 6 days off.
That's tough.
That's awesome. And I was asking him, I was like, are you gonna have your kids like on that set of days off? I was like, because that would work perfect, like 1 week on, 1 week off. And I was just like, you know, we just talk about it. I'm like, what is your plan? And he's like, we haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do about the kids yet. But he told me, he's like, Colorado's a 50-50 state and she's okay with everything 50-50. Like, he said that she was like on board with this because she wanted it too. Like, she was checked out of this relationship.
We know a lot of what was said by Nicole Kessinger there was untruthful. And now, before we listen to this next excerpt of what she had to say in the same interview, let's just remember this timeline that the Watts family returned home from North Carolina on August 7th. Their lives were all taken by early morning of the 13th. And Shanann was only home from late in the day on the 7th, the 8th and the 9th. She left for Arizona early morning on the 10th. And this is what Nicole Kessinger has to say about interacting with Watts relative to his family being around or not. And I think this is very telling. What do you think?
Because, like, he could pretty much call me whenever he wanted. Like, I was the one that would tell him, like, hey, when your kids are awake, you need to spend time with your kids. Like, do that. And then after they go to bed, like, if you want to talk to me, you can talk to me. But it was never, like, this super, super restricted thing. Like, sometimes, like, right after work, if I was, like, still talking to him, I get kind of bummed out. And I tell him, just like, oh, it's frustrating sometimes, like, having to, like, wait. But at the same time, I was never like, this is horrible, or, it was always like, I understood why. But then once his kids were asleep, he never, like, had any, it was like he could do what he wanted. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, sure. He was in his basement, and she's upstairs, and they're not speaking.
My friends, I would like to propose that what Nicole Kessinger is talking about there is trying to control Chris Watts in areas of their relationship where she feels frustrated. Remember, they have a whole 5 or more weeks of their relationship together with his family across the country. Now, the family's coming back on the 7th. I'm sure this was causing her a great deal of anxiety. We know it was. We see indicators of that. And she wanted to be in control of as much as she could. You know what, Chris? When your kids are around, you can hang out with them, okay? I don't even want to hear from you. Don't need to hear about it. You're with your kids. You're with your kids. Capiche? And then when you're not with them, then you can be with me, but only when you are not with them, right? I first got this idea listening to The Deception Detective, and I think he is so spot on. Every time I listen to it now, that really is all I can hear. But the main thing I want to point out about that excerpt is she tells investigators, when I would get frustrated because, I couldn't see him or talk to him right after work, I just tell him, yeah, it's frustrating, but like, I understand. My gosh, his children were only home in Colorado with him for a few days. And Shanann was only there for 2.5 days. And I would like to propose that the time that his family was home, this was so frustrating and unacceptable to her that she became absolutely unbearable and demanded that things needed to change. In fact, we know that something like this is the case due to what the channel's investigation just learned about what investigators knew about Nicole Kessinger and some part she played in the nefarious activities that happened in the days leading up to the end of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste's life. And we will be going deeper into that in the next 2 episodes of this series. In this Dr. Phil episode, we're about to explore a little bit It was recorded right after Chris Watts' final confession to the 3 investigators when they went out to speak with him in Dodge Correctional Facility after he had already been charged, sentenced, and was no doubt spending the rest of his life in prison. Dr. Phil, in this clip, talks to Shanann's family's attorneys. He brings up the topic saying, "We know that the other person in the investigation that was questioned was the mistress. Did anything actually come of that investigation?" In talking to the mistress. We will then hear what the attorneys had to say, and guys, it is very interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but wow, wait until you hear this now.
Chris Watts is sharing new details about the night he killed them. An attorney for Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandy Rusick, told our Dylan Thomas his clients were briefed on the new information and were evaluating their next steps.
We need to pay attention to the fact that they say here that the family was evaluating their next steps. Dr. Phil asked the attorneys why investigators went to talk to Chris Watts in February of 2019.
As we expressed, it's our guess that there was another person they were looking into or investigating that would have required enough time to either determine if charges should be brought or if that was not an avenue to be explored. And we're unsure at this point if that's ongoing investigation or not, so we don't want to go too far down that road.
The Rusick's family attorneys offer an explanation of why the Rusicks may simply not care if law enforcement goes after someone else that may have been involved. I mean, think of Chris Watts' initial confession. He blamed Shanann for these atrocities. He blamed Shanann. The Rusick's family's main concern was to clear Shanann's name, and rightfully so. They probably felt after that happened they could move on. The result of that interview in February 2019 from Dodge Correctional Facility is that Shanann's name was, in fact, cleared. The family attorneys say that with this confession, they hope that it can be known by all that Chris Watts did not walk in to find his daughter's lives being taken by the hands of Shanann. The attorney goes on to say, and man, I can totally understand this, and I so much feel for Sandy Rusick and the Rusick family, that the way the information is coming out now, rather than in a prolonged way, as it would in a trial when they had time to emotionally prepare for what they were going to hear, there's information coming out every 2 to 3 weeks. And it's making Sandy feel kind of angry. And my gosh, who could blame the woman? It's torture. The attorney then goes on to explain how the Rusicks went about making the decision that they did regarding the outcome they'd feel okay with there being a trial or not being a trial, accepting Chris Watts' plea or not, and having death penalty on the table or not. And remember, the information that they were given from District Attorney Rourke upon which they made that decision was information that District Attorney Rourke himself was not even certain of, because they never analyzed the evidence that was found in the investigation. So the story that they based that decision on was that pregnant Shanann, Bella, and Celeste's lives all ended in the home, and then Chris Watts loaded each of them into the truck deceased, drove them to Survey 319, where he disposed of their bodies. But that is not what really happened.
That the family made the choice, whether you believe it's the correct one or not, to not pursue the death penalty. If it were me, I don't know how that would sit with me, knowing that she didn't know the full story.
And that might very well have changed the position she took, what she advocated for at the time.
All I can tell you is what I might do. It would definitely have changed
Well,
the calculus
isn't that
for
some
me.
egg in District Attorney Rourke's face? District Attorney Rourke relayed information to Shanann Watts' family based on an incomplete investigation, an investigation that he knew was incomplete, an investigation where evidence that was collected was not even analyzed. And based on that information, he asked Shanann Watts' family to make probably the biggest decision of their life so far. He stayed in their home for 3 days. After he found out some information that I talked about in the part 1 of this series, that Michael Prill indicated in his report in the discovery before the timeline, that not all of the material was found in Chris Watts' phone. In fact, he came across items from the secret calculator app, as he says, just as a result of curiosity. He says that the forensic lab didn't have whatever was needed to access those inner storage vaults of an iPhone. And now that he knows that there was a secret calculator app, that there are places within that phone that might exist content that is relevant to the investigation, his plan was, as he outlined in the discovery report, to obtain another search warrant that would soon be executed, and the investigation would continue on. The report was dated October 30th, 2018. Straight away, District Attorney Rourke and Steve Wren got on a plane to go to North Carolina to spend 3 days with the Rusick family. Upon their return, on November 6, 2018, they struck a plea deal with Chris Watts. Isn't that interesting timing? We are going to tie all of the pieces together, what has been discussed in part 1, and this part of part 2, coming up very soon in the continuation of part 2. And when we conclude, we will be able to share with you the information that we learned as a result of this channel's investigation just last week. Thank you so much for...
Sorry, that statement was outdated. So, oh my gosh, guys, so much. And I am not going to have too much more to say because, guys, I'm fucking tired. It's 1:30. It's been almost 3 hours. Yikes. And my brain is a little overwhelmed with all this, even though I made all this content on my own. And so I've already thought about it a lot and gone through it a few million times, but it's just a lot. Let's see. Yeah, I made Read Deeply a moderator for the day. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much, Read Deeply. So, to post that link, so it's right there. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you very, very much. Yeah. So, okay, guys, last time I'm putting the Patreon link in chat. Because we're trying to grow the community over there. We already have a tons of stuff over there, tons of stuff, whole case files, exclusive content on the Watts case, including what really happened in the Watts Christmas Eve, that video. And it's not the same old stuff you've already seen a million times. I promise you, everybody that's watched it has said, oh my God, I thought that I've heard everything there was to say about that video. No, there's a couple things that I've just kept my mouth shut about for a long time because, well, first of all, I couldn't talk about it on YouTube. But second of all, I wasn't trying to be nasty about it or anything. I want to present it and discuss it for the right reasons, which is, of course, in concern, excuse me, and protection of and care for the children. Not to just become some kind of like hate banter, which does happen on YouTube, which is the unfortunate thing. It's hard to put out material on something that is even a little controversial without it taking on a whole life of its own, where you're like, oh crap, I don't know if that's really what was needed or that I wanted to happen. You know? So anyway, I'm going on a little tangent there. I'm super tired. So if you join Patreon today or tomorrow, and there's a discount code there, whatever you join as, I will give somebody the same membership for 6 months. You can pick who you want to gift it to, or I'll just someone random. You can either do that now, put it in chat, or email me. My email is wattsobsession@gmail.com. And I really appreciate the support for the channel and also for the growth of the Patreon, because that's something I just really want to do right now for the sake of the channel and getting you guys information and being able for all of us to have a good, open, honest, uncensored discussion. Yeah, my brain is really toast. It really is. And then also Discord as well. And there's the Discord link also, of course. Let's see. The Christmas Eve video that Shanann Watts had posted. Do you know the one I'm talking about where Chris Watts comes in, he's dressed as Santa, and Cece is terrified, he's screaming and oh God. Either you've seen it or you haven't, but whether you have or you haven't, it's terrible nonetheless. Welcome. Yes, you will have to watch it from the beginning. So glad you're here though. Let us know what you think after you watch it. Yeah, we went over a lot today. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks guys. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you guys. Hey, Skydream. Yes. I remember a while back you had come across some things you need to sit on for a while. Yeah, that's some of the stuff that I'm starting finally to talk about on Patreon. I simply couldn't do it on YouTube. Even when I tried, well, I got too nervous myself. It really is putting it's putting the channel at risk, quite honestly. And then also it created just too much unwanted extra. Patreon membership is $5 a month. Oh, Skydream, thank you so much. It's so kind of you to say. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are so kind. Okay, guys, I'm going to end this. I feel like I'm ending this abruptly, but man, we've been here for 3 hours. But yeah, there's still so much more to say. I'm going to do another Watts live again soon, and we will be doing a live stream on Patreon either Sunday or Thursday. I think it's probably at this point going to be Thursday because, yeah, let's be realistic. It's going to be Thursday. It is. So I hope to see you guys there. Thank you so much for being here. I just love reading your comments. You guys are such an important part of the channel. I really do just appreciate each and every single one of you. And yeah, thanks. And moderators, thank you so much. You're amazing. Couldn't do without you. And really good seeing some of you guys I haven't seen in a while and meeting some new people as well.
Here we go once again for a marriage lightning man. Don't you worry, it's gonna be alright. 'Cause I'm the judge and jury, and we'll be up all night. You better check for pose. You better check for pose. You better check for
They are dead on that.
all the best things love can bring. All in the blind spot that we don't see. Wipe the dirt.
It was earlier tonight. I don't.
13th, she had her 13th birthday party. She was happy that we were all together.
She wanted to walk the rest of the way.